Ashley?
Okay.
Okay, we'll start.
Just look.
So we're gonna begin the work session, August 16th. We'll begin with a debrief of the 4th of July events. I would ask to limit the comments from each organization to roughly 5 minutes to kind of help with the movement of the meeting. To start off, the reporting will be Natalie with the CAC.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Do I have to stand or can I sit?
You can sit.
Okay.
And this is just gonna be the basic reporting, and then we,
Yeah.
after this, we'll bring the CAC to the table.
Yeah.
And then we'll discuss things further. But this will just be the basic report.
I'll just say what I said with our debriefing, because
Yeah,
I
that'll work.
summarized everything that was with the survey and with the board. Too. So most of the comments that were made in the survey and what we heard on the 4th of July were extend the parade routes, have throwers, have enough for the people at the end. Because a lot of them dish out at the beginning and the middle, but then the people at the far end kind of get, mixed out. Want it back downtown. And we discussed Cleveland Avenue, Library Park, or the new high school. And we have updates on that, but that's not at this meeting. More food trucks, meals, meals not snacks. We do have an update about the 3 food trucks who didn't show up and the 2 that left early, but it's, I don't think I can discuss that right now. I mean, that's more of a detailed thing. More shade canopies. We did look into pricing for that. For future events, didn't like the event split up. We have a reason for that. Have teen and adult type games instead of just for kids. And advertise the shuttle schedule better, and this year was more of a trial run to see how well it would do. And as far as the more food trucks and meals and for meals, suggestion was reach out to nonprofit groups or churches to cook and sell burgers and hot dogs at a booth.
Next one will be Lerner County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant.
No, hold on. Hold on, I have to share my screen, not there.
He has a PowerPoint for it.
Yes. Sure, let's try again. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Haven't had to do this in a long time.
It's all good.
That's okay. I can go with that.
Okay, I'm just having, it's right here, but I can't get it up. See? It's like on the side. It did. I'm not losing my mind, not just me.
That's okay.
Okay, you want to get started?
Sure.
Sorry.
All right, so for the 4th of July, staffing wise, for the parade and outlying areas, we dedicated 2 supervisors, 4 full-time deputies, 7 reserve deputies, 5 cadets. And within that, we had 5 out on bike patrol and the 5 cadets assigned just for the public safety for the parade itself. Throughout the day in the festival, we had 2 reserve deputies assigned on foot in the festival. For patrol coverage for the town, we had a 2-man day shift car, a 2-man car that came in at noon, then our normal power shift car deputy that came in, and our swing shift deputy that came in at $1,600. Staffing for that evening was increased over last year. We The year before in 2021, we had 2 cars for the night shift. We had that up to 5 cars, a sergeant, a corporal, a trainee, and a deputy, and then 2 reserve man cars up here. Just to help with the festival and with some of the calls we were getting. We were initially told that they didn't need us for any kind of traffic control or assistance with the parking in the beginning. But that caused some additional problems with just the parking and emergency vehicle being able to get through there. So we assisted a little bit, then transitioned several of those cars at the end just to get the vehicle traffic out of there. So 4 deputies transitioned at the end of the night to just help with that traffic flow and get people out of there safely. After that, after we got the traffic out, they transitioned back into fireworks patrols. You shift to the next screen, whatever. So in 2021, this was our call load for fireworks complaints. Now, typically the sheriff's office in the past and in this year in the general county, we put in fireworks calls. And we pinned in our pending queue for 30 minutes. And if a deputy doesn't have time or that district doesn't have time, they clear out of there. And if we get multiple calls, that's when they'll stay in there. But a lot of times when a call comes in, our deputies may be tied up on work in an actual assault case or something like that, and they'd be tied up for a while, no responders. So instead of that pending queue that's building up all night, generally 30 minutes and they clear up. But if we get multiple calls, we'll keep them in there so we can get deputies over there. You go to the next screen, Betty, Kelly. So in 2021, this was kind of our call count for fireworks calls in the town of Wellington. So completed necessary action are kind of the same thing. We got there, we took some kind of action that is maybe an educational action or a warning of some type. Quiet upon arrival, as we get there, we look in the area or we sit in the area, we don't hear the fireworks, we don't see them. We're unable to locate, we get there. And we may be dispatched to it's coming from this address and it's actually coming for 2 or 3 blocks away, just the sounds reverberating back into that area. And we're unable to find where it's at. Let's go to the next screen, please. So these are our call logs for Wellington for 2022. So there's the first page of calls. You can go to the second, next screen. So 2 full pages of calls, just to call loads coming in or self-initiated where our deputies ran across something where they stopped and helped. You switch to the next screen, Colin. So 2022, we had a total of 68 total contacts or calls. Now, this is kind of deceiving. It says 1 citation issued, but we actually had a total of 4 citations in the town. 3 of those wrap into the report to follow because it actually, we've collected evidence or something. So they're tied into reports. They don't come into our citation status. 6 completed, 7 necessary action taken. Again, we get on scene. We take some kind of action there. Again, 11 quiet upon arrival. We did a lot more, try to do a lot more of the education, verbal warnings, written warnings up to 14 and 11 this year, making those 68 contacts. If you go to the next screen, Kelly. We tried to have our deputies do some detailed call logs, even if they did the completed or citations or something in there. So if we were called back there multiple times, we could take the next step of enforcement action. And we kind of had a briefing. So if it wasn't the same deputy being called back, they had a general understanding of why we were there initially. Go to the next screen, please. Again, just kind of did putting out some of the context, some notes of why we were there, the warnings we were giving them, kind of going over how the ordinance changed of what we were allowing, what we weren't. Next screen, please. Coming, just some of our quiet upon arrivals, going in there, spending some times in the area, drove around the area, was unable to find them, no fireworks being discharged upon their arrival, spoke to family members. Trying to look into those, even we got there and we weren't observing that, spending some extra time and talking to some of the neighbors, spending some time there to see if we saw it. Next slide, please. Again, some of the unable to locate driving through the area, so quite a bit of those. Next slide, please. Verbal warnings, again, of coming in there. So if we gave them the verbal warning the first time, if we got a second officer dispatch, they can pull that up, see who we talked to, and we can take that next step into issuing a citation. Next slide. So in reviewing the calls, again, we wrote 4 citations, 11 written warnings between the 1st and the 5th. A 5th citation was issued, but it was outside the town limits, so we didn't count that into the actual totals there. Evidence log shows we seized approximately 450 bottle rockets, over 500 firecrackers. Despite the increased number in the street, establishing probable cause is always a challenging effect because we start responding to the area, everybody says the cops are coming. So they put them away, or they start denying it, or they stop shooting the fireworks. So looking at that, increasing our bike patrols next year, trying to get into the areas a little quicker and more covert, but that presents another challenge. So it's kind of hard to seize the fireworks if our deputies are on a bike. So we can issue the citation, but that doesn't necessarily solve the problem because they can start shooting the fireworks again as soon as we leave. Again, we reiterated, although typically our calls for service cancel out after 30 minutes, no calls for service in the town of Wellington were canceled out. Thanks to the Board of Trustees, deputies were able to respond to legitimate calls of illegal fireworks. The ones that were leaving the ground, which is a huge benefit on a response. Again, the fireworks still pose a significant problem. They were quickly overwhelmed by those number of calls you saw on those first 2 slides that coming in. Just a few minutes apart, every single one. And how do you get the resources there in time to deal with it without, having 30 to 40 deputies up here, just handling every single call that comes out minutes or seconds upon each other. And we get to the call, we deal with frustrated people that are irritated. We're not dealing with 3 houses down that are doing the same thing or put them away before we got there. So it's trying to balance that up and doing some of that education. Again, we tried to really improve doing some of those written warnings and entering notes in case we had that repeat offender, we could come back and move to that next level and issue the citation. So I'm hoping that we saw some productivity out of there, but again, as with the whole county, once we get into the 4th of July, the calls are just so overwhelming and frustrating. In the middle of this, on the 4th of July, we were also dealing with an assault over 2 neighbors physically fighting over fireworks. So that took a couple of those deputies out of that and the time to try to investigate that case and get a successful resolution in that case. So as you can see, we try to bring a lot of resources up here, a lot of our volunteers up here to be out there, to be a presence and to try to do some educational value, as well as some of it didn't work. We issued citations and hold them accountable for their actions. As you can see in there, that the amount of fireworks we seized and got off the streets, the amount of calls we're hopping to every few minutes, but still being able to see those and get those logged in safely, so they weren't out there on the streets being used.
Good job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next one is going to be Chief Patterson, doing the fire protection.
Thank you. Thanks for
Welcome.
trustees. Yeah, sorry, they're like trying to get me set up there. Chief Casian's not gonna be real happy. Have a job. He left for Mexico for like 4 days and doesn't have a job. Yeah, sorry about that, Chief.
Funny.
But yeah, thank you, trustee members and CAC members for letting me make a brief presentation. I too will kind of jump on. We did provide some written information for the July 5th debriefing, and I wasn't able to attend, so I'm going to kind of jump into some of the minutes that were on there and just highlight some of those other things that were there. So one of the items in the minutes that talked about the maps and the public safety plans, and in the written letter that we provided, again, with not being at the meeting, what we provided and the way we feel is a little contrary to what was in the minutes, so I just wanted to address that. The safety plans and the maps were actually very important resources for us as a whole. The work that was put into it was super in-depth and it's very important for us. What we like to do on larger scale incidents is develop an incident action plan. So for this event, we utilize those to help develop our incident action plan. We put those together so that every vehicle, every staff member has one of these. And what's included in that starts to break down the events for the day, our priorities for the day, the time of the day when things are going to happen. And what's also included in that, what was really important for us, especially in an event like this, is things like the maps that give us the idea of when the streets are going to be closed, the directions of travel, where people are going to park, where we can expect inflow and outflow of traffic. And then as it breaks down into some of the events specifically, things like the aid stations, where the entry and exits are for those, where we can expect for us to come to bring in ambulances and things like that. So I can't stress how important that is for us, and that the work that the staff did put in to do that, the volunteers and the event coordinators that were doing those. So thank you for the work on that. It was important for us. So I wanted to make sure that got caught, that we do utilize those, and they are important for us. And it allows us to get a historical record for how things are going to go. And as we do debriefs like this, how they're important for us from there. So thank you to the work that got done on that. One of the other items that got picked up on there was just some talk about the size of the vendor spots, or maybe vendor confusion that was going on. And it really, as Captain Pettit did some of the work on there, in the minutes, we talked about us restricting the size or wanting the size to be 10 by 10, and that's not the case. We just wanted to make sure that there was confusion maybe between us doing the inspection, the vendor that was there, and maybe the individuals that helped set that up. So we just want to help be part going forward of making some of that clarification ahead of time, so that whatever the size is, that the vendor knows what the size is, the tents correlate to that, and that the tents or things are within the space relative to providing that 20-foot clearance in between. So we don't want to dictate the size. We just want to help make sure that if we have some piece of that we're clear on what that is, and that the vendors know that ahead of time. And so the thought about maybe having one point of contact that's in charge of all the vendors, so that we can have communication with one point of contact and they have the same. So again, we don't want to dictate the size of that. We just want to help be communicative and collaborative in the process of communicating that to those that are going to come set up. One of the other points, I think, just to kind of talk about the event as a whole. First time for myself being part of the planning and execution piece, and then talking with Captain Pettit and some of the other staff that was there. We did also put on a bit of extra staff for the day, just to try to deal with the normal calls for service, as well as the parade and some of the other events from there. From a planning perspective, from what was presented in the incident action plans and the safety plans, we felt like the event went off really well as compared to what the plans were and what was presented to us. So we were very appreciative of the work that went on that side of it. The other side that we expect, as many know, but I think it's worth stating, is that the Fire Protection District protects 288 square miles within this area, not just the town of Wellington. So as we outlined in that, just really for an expectation piece, is that we did experience and had 4 independent EMS calls within an hour period. The first one started about 6 minutes before the parade started, and that was on the east side over in the meadows that way. Completely separate from anybody, didn't have anything to do with the parade, but that took our first ambulance and the first medical call and the first transport from there. The next one was right over by the loop stop, like 8 minutes after the parade started at 10:08. And then we had another medical call that was up on 76 and County Road 7. And then our final one was right at the tail end of the parade, right in the middle of Cleveland. So it just got to that time. So it's to be expected when you bring somewhere in the range of 12,000 people into a very small state. So it's just navigating that, besides the large fire engines that weigh about 58,000 pounds and carry 8,200 pounds of water on them just alone themselves. We did also able to put in one of the smaller SUV vehicles to help kind of navigate through that piece of it, to help position people on the north and south side of the street closures and be able to navigate through there. But even the first call that we had, dealing with kind of navigating through town, through people that are narrow streets already, no sidewalks to walk through, walking the streets, bringing kids, strollers, that kind of thing, just trying to make sure that we can see between all the cars and the little ones walking through cars, and taking our time to get through and across and over and to the other side. So, but that for us went well. We also experienced the same thing, completely independent of the time of the events, but at 7 o'clock, we ran another 4 medical calls, kind of back to back to back in that same time frame, where we were in town, north of town, and on the east side of the district there. So just important, I think, some of the discussions as we go through forward on how we kind of continue to plan for those type of things, and make sure that we have enough resources to deal with the influx of people. Recognize that the challenges of getting there quickly has a different expectation. Getting there safely is more important than quickly, but we recognize that comes back. And we also recognize there's a portion of our district that isn't participating throughout the day, and we have the same obligation to serve both sides of that. So that piece of it. The last piece I'll echo just the fireworks situation. So while we don't technically have the enforcement side of it, we do the best we can to be a deterrent and driving around. So I'll echo because I spent along with staff the entire day and through the end of the fireworks time there, and you couldn't drive one street without seeing multiple groups of people doing fireworks, legal or illegal, but the illegal ones always seem to be the block or two away. And as you try to navigate through the streets and doing that, it's like, we got excited, but to actually watch somebody light a firework that's going to leave the ground, we couldn't see that, or just a silhouette of 30 people that were all in the dark, and somebody is maybe the one doing that. So, you know, we recognize that. We feel for those that it's a challenge against, but we also recognize it's a nationwide problem that everybody's dealing with, and we do have a little bit of a unique challenge that's posed to us simply from access. If we only got to drive 25 minutes up to get the illegal and insane type fireworks, if that's what we're going to be presented with, just from an access piece. So, and I think those are kind of the big parts of that. And just appreciate the opportunity to kind of provide some feedback to that.
Thank you. Next will be Main Streets with Anita Hardy and Meg.
Hi, thanks for having us this evening. It means I'm speaking. That's what that one was. Main Street conducted their own miniature survey, not to take over what the CAC or the town did for the survey about the 4th of July's events, but just focusing kind of in our program area. And that survey was sent out via our newsletter and then directly to our business owners in our program area. So the responses that we received were minimal. As I believe a copy of that is in your packet, we had 11 total responses. So I just want to summarize some of those responses for you, but also then some individual feedback from conversations that we've had with our business owners in the area in regards specifically to the 4th of July. Overall, the responses that we received was they really, really appreciated having an event in Centennial Park. It supported their business. It supported the downtown area. And I personally, and I believe that our board collectively will agree with this, that we have to thank the American Legion for putting this event in Centennial Park together, to bring that together. Because on top of the American Legion doing that, then our business owners in this downtown in our program area came together and worked together and put on an event in the park that was a lot of fun and really well attended. Now, I was fortunate I was able to attend both activities. But it was great to wander through and see everybody having fun there at Centennial Park and downtown. And then the influx of business then that did bring to the businesses that remained open on Cleveland Avenue throughout the day. And that feedback was evident in those survey responses as well. And being that it was in the Main Street program area, we did market and promote that event. And we worked really hard so that we could maintain the town and CAC's logo, coloring, sizes in that marketing, so we could show that cohesiveness while we were promoting not only just the town's events, but also what was happening inside of our program area. And I hope that that was well received by everybody. One of the other comments that we had received on that was to please keep the parade on Cleveland Avenue. That is a huge business day for our businesses downtown. And when that parade is there and all those people that come into our community to see this event, that's a fantastic event for Northern Colorado and for Wellington, brings people that don't necessarily recognize or remember or know that we have restaurants, that we have retail shops, and we have a great local coffee shop as well. So please keep the parade on Cleveland Avenue. We did hear some comments back that said it was, while we really enjoyed that, it was challenging and for the divisiveness, there felt like there was some division between having events in several areas. That we've had suggestions on how to maybe help bring some of that cohesiveness back that I won't go into. If you want some more information on that, we can definitely chat, but that having events in two separate areas was challenging. How do I know which one to go to? What do I do with each one? Where do I go with each event? Like I said, I felt fortunate that I personally was able to attend both. But it did present a problem, because I will say, on a personal level, both my husband and I said, where do we go first? What do we do? And so that does crop up. Some of the other feedback that we received was that the shuttle was a great idea. We really hope that because this was its first year in implementation, that those kinks get worked out. And because that was fantastic, because that traversing across town after the parade is challenging, especially for families that have kiddos that have to get them out of vehicles, put them back into vehicles to move across town. One of the biggest comments that we received, though, was to do what we could to encourage more local vendors and more support of our local businesses, both brick and mortar and those with trucks, whether it be retail shops or food trucks. I have one very specific comment from a food truck owner that I can share here, or I can share later. In more detail, I think I'll share more later, but right now, I think in general with this one was, please find a way to better position the food trucks. Access to the food trucks this year, when lines were there, showed that the food trucks that were in the back of the parking lot at the community park, the lines were so long, looked like you couldn't get to them. So local food trucks then were losing business. And that was disappointing. So maybe find a different way to set up the food trucks for better access for them. The biggest comment that we've really heard and had feedback is, please try to find ways to keep festivities in or around the downtown area. That's really the hub of our community. So what can we do to help continue keeping activities to help businesses have people come in and out? And then also to find a way to maybe lengthen out the activities so they don't have a stop in the middle of the afternoon. And then there's hours before the fireworks. If there's maybe a way to reschedule some of the things that are happening throughout the day to continue that participation on a full day, not just in chunks and with an empty space in between. Did I miss anything? I think that was it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Chamber of Commerce, Christy Cannon, man.
Yes, okay. First of all, I want to thank all the volunteers. I mean, that program, that event is quite a lot to plan and to execute. And I think in general, the chamber is very appreciative of everybody's efforts, and a lot of people in this room that really were involved with it. I think also in general, what we've heard from the businesses and in general the community is that it was considered a successful event. I mean, people really enjoyed it. There were glitches, but there's always glitches with any major event that's got that many moving parts. And you try to learn, but next year it's something different, you know? I do think that the one area that clearly did not go well was the CAC involvement with downtown businesses and what was perceived as a lack of collaboration, a lack of support for local businesses. The downtown businesses critically wanted some events to take place so it didn't dry up like last year, so that people stayed in the area. And they really wanted to partner with CAC to do events, to do in combination. because CAC was setting up the events at the Centennial Park, or not, at the Wellington Park, and then the downtown businesses wanted to keep things in the downtown area. So there was a strong desire to do that. Basically, the businesses ended up feeling like they weren't getting kind of that collaboration between the groups. So they ended up scheduling and structuring their own events, just to kind of make sure that things were going on. And that's kind of how the American Legion came in with the beer garden, and the beer garden and the American Legion was awesome. They gave booths to the local businesses to be present. So it was really, really good partnership. But I do think that the biggest disappointment that I heard from the local businesses downtown was that no matter what they felt like they tried to communicate in terms of like what they were doing with the beer garden and everything, they couldn't get CAC to kind of come on board with a combined marketing for all the events. And so I know at one point there was some feedback back and forth with Trustee Teets that she didn't really know, and the CAC didn't really know what was going on. But I do know there were businesses that posted the events within her social media posts. So there was communication about what the groups were doing, but it was very divisive, and there just wasn't strong collaboration. And I think that it left the business owners feeling like there was a lack of support from not just CAC, but also from the Board of Trustees. And some of that was added by when Trustee Gator voted down the liquor special permit for the beer garden for not legal reasons, but for, I think, personal reasons. That was perceived as a lack of support for businesses. And so I think that's important for everyone to know that that really was a kind of anger for the downtown businesses, and the feeling that the CAC and the Board of Trustees didn't support local businesses. I will say the only positive thing I saw that came out of all of that division time in a long time, all those local businesses downtown really, they gelled, they were cohesive. They actually worked really hard together to try to make things happen, and it created stronger relationships between all the businesses. And I think that was so that's the feedback we've heard in terms of like the overall summary of the meeting. Mary, what did you see on your end?
Same thing, echoing everything you're saying. You know, I think the businesses came together. And there's a lot of frustration though. It just really hurt me to see businesses. And I just think that it brought them together, but also it was tough for them. So I just hope that we can keep it all in one place next year. And
It's in two places, just having really kind of a more complete marketing plan in general, where there is just more comprehensive. So it's kind of like events are here, but it's not this like two groups doing it. One group that was doing the main marketing of it to include the business activities.
Next will be the American Legion, Dennis Roy.
I ran out of spots at the
No
table.
comments?
Comments?
And then fireworks, Brian.
So we had a really good shoot. I think most people enjoyed it. We did have a very good, I guess what we would say success on firing. We only had 2 4-inch shells and 3 5-inch shells not fire. So out of 584 go off. So that was very good. Probably one of the better ones we've had. Every single cake and slice in the front end went off without a fail. So it was very nice. A lot of positive comments on the Let's Talk Wellington and Facebook pages. It was a very trying year this year. We had incredible price increases. We had incredible product shortages. I actually drove to Indiana to pick up half of the show because I couldn't get it from my other supplier here, and had to, take the cost of that on and stuff. And just finding product around was very difficult. It does look like 2023 will be continue to go up. I just got told that a container In 2019, I know this for a fact, was $6,500 to ship a hazmat container from China to Los Angeles. Last year was $38,000, and this year it's closer to $43,400. So prices will be going up some. Fortunately, they won't be going up like they did from 20 to 20 or 21 to 22. But other than that, it went off real well. We did have issues with the fact that the county commissioners decided to put a fireworks ban 2 days, 3 days before the 4th of July, whatever day. We worked with Everett, and although there were some demands made, I just want to make sure we understand that it's not my responsibility to provide the field. It's my responsibility to set the shoot up and shoot it. I do the entire display area, which is probably where 90% of the what do you want to say, the fallout that could cause a problem will land, and then very little gets out. Some does, but not all of it does, but very little does. And so we had no issues with fire. We were asked to mow everything from the fence to Cameron. We didn't do that. That's not our real response. I think actually that would make things a lot worse, because then that'll make dead grass laying everywhere in the fallout zone. So, other than that, I think we did well. We struggled with help. We normally ask for 8 people to help us with the set up the show. We did have 8 on Sunday, and then when Monday rolled around, we had 5. And so we had to put in a lot of hours on the 4th of July, but we got it all set up.
We are having some AV difficulties, so we're having to close down and restart and things like that. I've got a recorder going, so
Okay.
it is getting recorded.
Okay. Perfect. So of the packet documents,
That's the owl camera coming along.
we have, let's see, when it comes to the Main Street survey results, you guys were just asking the main businesses.
Correct, we sent that out via our newsletter, and gosh, I think there's about 250 people that received that newsletter. But we specifically went to the businesses in our program area for their responses to make sure that we had their input, since they were the ones that are directly impacted by anybody visiting or not visiting them on the 4th of July.
Okay.
These results that you have here are the only results that we did receive back
Okay.
between all of that.
Okay. How many of these, or how many in the immediate area did not get feedback?
Oh, gosh. What I can say is that we have 12 responses, four of them are not business owners.
Okay.
Like I said, I believe it's a little over 200 that receive our newsletter, that there was a link to that survey in.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So,
Town survey results. How many did we send
Oh,
out? I mean, to
We didn't,
everybody
no, we
that
didn't.
subscribe?
It was just open for anyone, so multiple people could provide, I mean, the same person could provide 10 survey results if they wanted to. So there was no, we leave it open, we don't track who it is, we don't know who, we don't track IP addresses, none of that. So we included all the information, and looking through it, I'm of course always disappointed when people include information or survey, put in information that have absolutely nothing to do with the 4th of July. You know, which is a little frustrating. They're using it as a platform for some sort, but we included every single Word document. So it's all in there. It is now closed, so we can't have anybody else adding any more results.
We'll start with I guess trustee Gator, do you have any questions for anybody that's presented? No? No. Okay, trustee Pete's,
I do go back to you if I
Okay.
may.
trustee Kenny?
Yes. So I don't know who else may feel this, but this room is super tense right now. Because between the survey results and then people have reached out since the survey results have been available publicly, there is incredible, I heard the word division a lot of times tonight, but to be honest, I am incredibly ashamed of the outcome of this event for our community. I think logistically, it probably worked out. A lot of people participated, but it caused some rifts that are, I don't know if they'll ever be repaired, to be completely honest. And it's a division between incredibly important groups in our community. So examples are losing staff. That's crazy. Having entire nonprofit organizations no longer willing to volunteer for the town because of this situation and because of interactions they had with the CSC or individuals on the CSC. Incredibly embarrassing, especially because that falls back on the town, and it's just so sad because this is our prime. This is where Wellington shines. 4th of July is on our mural. I don't know what letter it is, but it's probably W. It's the pride and joy of our community. But when the event and the planning of it caused such outrage, it is really sad for our town. It is bad. It is bad for our town. And people could have attended and have no idea how it was planned or who did it or the relationships that were ruined because of it. And they probably had a good time. Fireworks were amazing. They probably enjoyed whatever event they went to. I have no doubt about that. But understanding the inefficiencies, the waste, and the ruining of relationships that are so important to our community hurts my heart beyond what you could believe. Because this is the heart of Wellington that we're talking about right now. In addition to that incredibly concerning feedback, this has been building for years at this point. It is not just this year. It is a battle that has been started between a commission of the town by volunteers and the community. And it has to be resolved. Like, absolutely no way that this continue as it is right now, and that I would be proud to call Wellington my home. And that this is the pride and joy of Wellington. Absolutely inexcusable. So, so we talked about just how ugly this was. And I hate to do it because I love this holiday. I love this for our town, but it was incredibly ugly. And you can see those responses directly through the survey results. There's a significant, if not the majority of them, are incredibly horrible, including personal jabs, which, at this point, I have the sense in my mind that I probably know where they came from. Like, that's how horrible the situation has become. And I'm not a negative person. I am not. So if I'm at this level where I'm so disgusted, I mean, that's really bad because I always look on the bright side. So that's one of the things. The things that came out of us that were wonderful, and I think it was acknowledged already by the chamber and Main Streets, is there is a lot of unity between the people who are victimized by the CAC, essentially, with their perception. They came together to do what they thought was right for Wellington and for their businesses. Many people reached out to me, both through these surveys and individually, to say that they feared retaliation. And they feel like it comes from the town, which sucks because it's not from the town. It may be from individuals or from the CAC. So it hurts me. But the wonderful thing is these groups that come together to do additional events and to participate. And I think the more people who participate, the better. The more events, the more things that we have in town, the better. More people can participate. Anybody can go where they need to and want to. I prefer to be in the shade trees. I'm gonna hang out all day in a park. That's a half a block from my house. I mean, that's why I moved down there. So there's preferences. So I love that we have multiple opportunities. But that was actually driven in a direction where it was perceived as, again, another war battle or battle of this giant war. That shouldn't be happening. The fact that, and I mentioned this earlier, that the primary volunteer organizations in our town. And when I say that, I mean, you will see multiple members from the Kiwanis groups that I'm a founding member of, and American Legion at every single fundraising nonprofit event that doesn't even benefit them. They will be there for every time. I see them at the food bank. I see them at, every single opportunity, including the primary volunteers for CEC in the past, that will have nothing to do with it anymore and feel physically threatened by participating. What kind of liability is that for our town? The other part I heard tonight that I would love to pursue further is the local focus. And what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? Are we trying to accomplish a regional event where people will come from Cheyenne and all of northern Colorado? Or is it a local event where we celebrate our community? And I don't know the direction of that, but I get a very good sense of what the community wants based on the survey. So I could say what I would guess, and I would say it's community local. That's what people want who live here. But I don't think that's the direction the event has gone. So I think there's an opportunity to go a different direction. Okay, the last thing I want to focus on is that this last year we hired staff in particular that has professional event planning experience, like has proven fundraising nonprofit, is the most organized person I've ever met in my entire life, person who can plan an event with a blindfold on and can do it exceedingly well. And this person was a member of our staff was completely wasted. We were not able to use her talents. We were not able to use our wonderful organization because essentially all of her decisions were held up by monthly or different meetings where there was no cohesive direction and there was so much conflict. That's a waste of our budgeting for those kind of roles. Additionally, what I see is a significant amount of hours that were spent on these items. And, I've worked on events before. My experience is from Wellarama. So I want to provide a quick figure. At some point, we realized that there's a lot of work to planning Wellarama. And we were trying to figure out if it was worth it or not to hire a third-party organization to plan the event. They would do fundraising, they would organize vendors, and then with our direction, after we had a initial consultation with this organization, we said, local only, main streets, businesses, this is the direction. We're looking for sponsors only from Wellington. And they said that they could do it. And it cost $12,000. And it was a full start to finish event planning package that they would do that. For the event that we were planning, our entire budget was around $12,000 for it. So it didn't make sense to use them. And we figured we could rely on the volunteers to do that at that level because we weren't that big. If this were to grow and any more from the perspective of Wellarama, it would have been a financial decision to use a third party or professional event planning service because they're efficient. They can do everything that we could otherwise do, but in such a smaller amount of time. They have connections, they've done traffic plans before. They've done all the things similar to what we hired staff to do exactly for that purpose. So we essentially already had that third-party event planning service, but we didn't use it. So all those hours that went into staff time were completely underutilized and completely inefficient. So I have a huge budgetary concern around the planning of this event. I think it is not good. And obviously has had very hurt all around. Okay, so that was one of the major pieces. The other one is I've been doing a little research outside of this after I received the packet for some major concerns I see in survey results. And we've been looking at other events and organizations essentially that have outgrown kind of the model that we have here. And it's the reason why is this is such a huge event at this point, and I am so thankful that it's grown to this level. Although I'm curious about the direction, but I think that's a sign of success of our community and our celebration of 4th of July. But at what point is it inefficient by budget and by planning and staff hours and the sanity of the cohesiveness of the community that we continue using that model? I don't think it's working. And I hate bringing all the bad news. We got a lot of great news tonight, but I cannot ignore the emails I've received that have incredibly concerning information. The survey results that are very sad, and the community, people reaching out to me who are at this point afraid to come to other people because they're worried about retaliation, who are some of the biggest fundraisers, proponents, and volunteers in our community. So that equation doesn't make sense. So that is some of my feedback from what I've heard tonight, and outside of this, what I've heard.
Trustee Mason?
I've just got a few clarifying questions maybe for myself and to kind of add on to what Trustee Kinney was mentioning there. Ms. Garcia, can you give us maybe just an approximate dollar figure? I see that we spent about 461 hours worth of staff time. Can you give us maybe an approximate dollar figure as to how much?
Sure. So to talk about the document that we included in the packet, there is a lot of overlap. So when we would attend a meeting, anybody attend a meeting, you know, there's talk about the 4th of July, there's talk about the Easter egg hunt, there's talk about, you know, a variety of things. So the hours that we included in the document are very conservative. So we felt like for transparency purposes, we included, like, if we attended a meeting, these were all the items that were discussed. But this was, you know, and then the hours we put in were, this is what we think was put towards 4th of July, you know, somewhat close, but just, we're very conservative with those numbers. So, you know, it says 461, maybe it was 431, 441, but it's somewhere in there's the upper 400. I went through the document a couple different times and played with numbers. And that's about what I came up with. So as a total, as the 461 hours, it's a little over $20,000 in staff time. You know, of course, if ratcheting down comes in anywhere between $18,000 and $19,000, even estimating on the very, very low side. So I wanted to create this document because I watched what happened last year and I saw the amount of staff time that was used, and we were not quantifying it. We weren't tracking anything. I didn't know. All I knew was Hallie was gone all the time and so busy, and I needed her. You know, it's like, I needed you to work on some projects, and she couldn't because she was busy with the CAC. So, and it's not so much that it's busy with the CAC, but there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of meetings to attend and things like that. So answering your question in kind of a roundabout way, I wanted to make sure I.
No, that's great. And honestly, I appreciate you mentioning that latter part, because I was actually going to ask, you know, how did that compare to amount of time that we spent in the past? But no worries there. Well, just a couple of things I'd like to say. I thought the 4th was an absolute blast. You know, obviously we have the usual hiccups, running out of candy on the parade route and that sort of thing.
Always.
But I will say that, you know, I don't think it was without the participation of some of these groups really getting out there and putting on some of these side events. Obviously, the American Legion putting on the beer garden downtown. We would not have had participation in the downtown businesses had those folks not been able to put that on. It's very disappointing to me that the Kiwanis, a volunteer organization, decided to pull out of this because of divisiveness with the CAC. And the fact that the Legion really didn't want to contribute with those guys either. That's very depressing. You know, and I think we need to figure out a better way to get all that working together. So yeah, I think it's very clear that we've got some divisiveness going on here. And me personally, I'm absolutely not happy about losing our town clerk, Main Street's executive director, multiple CAC committee members from the past, potentially due to Board of Trustees member. And I think that's very concerning. So that's all I have.
I thought from what I saw, it was a pretty good day. I think the police did a fantastic job. You know, I know a few people around here wish we could get the fireworks under control a heck of a lot better. And it sounded like, yeah, it was crazy that night. So I don't even know how you even did it as good as you can. As far as having two different places, yeah, I'd like to see it all localized. We need to have the town, have the boards, have the businesses work together a heck of a lot better. We gotta definitely have a meeting of the minds on this. And I don't think that's that big of a problem. Maybe I'm very naive at this, but you know, it's gotta be for the good of the town at this point, you know, let the egos go past and you know, start working together. And you know, I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding at certain times. I don't know how it ended up out at the Wellington Community Park, and then we needed to do the other part. It should have been together. And yeah, I think we just have to work as a team. I mean, it's gotta be for the best of the town. It's gotta be for the best of the people that are not necessarily on Main Street, but it also has to be positive for the people on Main Street too. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a big money maker, and you know, we definitely don't want to hurt businesses no matter where they're located at. You know, as far as other things too, as far as businesses from out of town, yeah, I don't really think that's a bad thing to have, because I think we need to be promoting our town to other businesses. Hopefully we can bring them in. You know, we're trying to grow this town. We're trying to grow it in a positive way by bringing in new businesses into this town. So, yeah, I mean, it's good that we got to promote our people. We want to make sure that they're promoted, whether they're on Main Street, whether they're on the south side of town, wherever. But, you know, we need to promote the town, hopefully to make it grow, make it get a better tax base too, by bringing in more businesses at that point. So again, we gotta, you know, we gotta get everybody working together on this, on it. You know, we got a great town. We got a great program here. We got great support staff here. You know, I think our people, you know, we put in a lot of hours. I mean, the volunteers that were there did a fantastic job. I mean, they worked their butts off. And we should respect them for doing that, whether it's CAC, whether it's Main Street, whether it's Legion, whoever. You know, we gotta respect everybody at this point. And the divisiveness is on all sides right at the moment. So we just need to bring it together. You know, we are a community. We gotta work together as a community at this point. Let's try getting some healing going on. Thank you.
Trustee Teets.
So I do commend everybody and Legion, Chamber, everybody. At the end of the day, it would have been amazing to be able to have everything combined. I couldn't even imagine what that attendance would have looked like, because they said about 4,000 out of the 12 were over at Wellington Community Park. I couldn't even imagine what 12,000 in attendance would look like in one centralized location. I just had a few questions as far as, or comments. So I did want to give a kudos to Fire and LCSO. I did end up seeing a post that there was some bickerment about someone getting a fine or receiving a ticket, and a resident went on and made a claim that they saw your guys' posts, knew they were going to be enforcing it, so they chose to buy legal fireworks this year. So I do want to say that that was pointed out, that you could have gone two totally different routes if you wanted to break the law or not break the law. But at the end of the day, I do want to say that your guys' posts are reaching our community, because I see it when I do look at the pages. So I want to thank you. I know that that is probably the least desired night for issuing fines that you guys probably ever want to operate under. So I'm extremely grateful. I know we had a huge ask of you guys and you all stepped up. Other question was, did we see any fires, like actual fires on the 4th of July this year? Did you guys challenge any?
We didn't have any. So I think we had a little bit of unique, as hot as the day was, we were fortunate to see that from the month and a half or so before, we were in red flag warning days with high wind and low humidities day after day after day. we had a very short window of time where leading into that, the temperature was high, but we also had some humidities and some lower wind events that we hadn't experienced literally up to the week before, to the point where you saw fire bans in place and that kind of thing. So, so I was looking out for us because
That's what I was
it
gonna
was the
say.
very next day when
You've
that, when
got
the
like
wind
4th of
really kicked up, and the rain kicked up. So, yeah, we had higher than expected humidities, which helps us with those lighter flashy fuels and the ability for things like the fallout or even some of those aerial fireworks, that are smaller ones to catch those light grasses on fire. So we're pretty fortunate.
Awesome. Is there any way to lessen the demand on you guys on the 4th of July? I know that you guys have so many acreage to cover,
Yeah.
like you had said, I think it's 200 and some odd square miles. Is there anything that assists in, well, 288 square miles? Is there anything that assists as far as CAC planning goes to?
What I would say, I guess, the day of event, I can't think of anything. It's gonna be the roll of the dice. But I think of the earlier we can get through the planning piece to be able to deal with those things the things that come up, the challenges that, or the questions that come, so we can help navigate those things. We recognize that supply chain issues, buying tents, things like that are gonna be challenges. And so the earlier that we can look at, right, we're talking about an event that we already know the date next year. It's July 5th, 2020, or July 4th, 2023. It's gonna be on a Tuesday, I think, if I had to guess, but we know when that is. So things like getting contracts in place earlier, doing those things, making a decision on those type of things so that we can, utilize those things. It's, it's hard when staff's gone, but trying to replicate what you did and taking the things that are like this and using those little things that didn't work as well and working on those earlier so that we can kind of be collaborative, help with the planning process. And we don't want to plan, but we want to be able to provide constructive feedback to the plans that you guys have put in place to help meet that ultimate goal of, we're going to just look on, we're always going to err on the side of safety on that piece of it, right? At the other, can't go without thinking about what happened in another town on 4th of July, and we just don't want to be that town. Right? Someone's going to be that town, but it doesn't want to be us. Or if we do, we're going to be ready to respond and be able to respond appropriately.
Got it. One of the other questions was, it was my understanding there was some conflict with Parks and Rec staking bounce houses down with sandbags. But I had a conversation with Tina with Fort Collins Bounce House to kind of see why we staked and sandbagged. And it was explained to me that there is safety clauses on the equipment that actually state. Do you know anything about
I wouldn't
safety
either.
clauses with bounce
Yeah.
houses?
I can't speak to that now.
Okay.
I know that the only thing I can speak to is just some questions about staking and where staking is appropriate. Things like the larger the structure, the longer the stakes have to be, which then gets you into things like underground electrical, underground cable, underground wires, and irrigation equipment and that kind of thing. So I would just say that you have to kind of defer to the manufacturer of the equipment or the representative equipment, and then the location where you're going to put it in, and make sure those two people can speak on exactly what type of equipment and then how they're going to fix those or secure those.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. As far as Chamber, Main Street, American Legion, I truly don't think anybody sitting on the CAC, and that is me included, nobody seeks drama. Nobody looks for division when it comes down to trying to plan these things. We do get restricted, so to say, on making choices and decisions, where when we had a discussion with Everett a while ago, it was kind of one of those things where the discussion was, well, do you want 2 bounce houses and 10 vendors and a parade in a park? Or do you want a full event for the 4th of July for all of the community? Then you have to move it. If you want all of this extra stuff, it cannot happen down in Centennial Park anymore. So, and one of the main complaints that we had filtered a few years back, Nat, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things was there wasn't enough bounce houses for kids. So that was a heavy complaint that we had filtered years previous. So we added bounce houses. I think we did 5 this previous year because of the previous year's complaints on not having enough for kiddos to do they would get too close to the cars at the car show because the lines for 2 bounce houses would send them out into the car show. So it was more of along the lines of pretty much all CAC's planning is reactive to community feedback. It's planning for what's happening the next year, going off of the whole community. And I'm not saying your guys' businesses on Cleveland don't matter, but we have a lot of businesses all around town. So trying to figure out how to include main streets, chamber, I know you guys handle all of the businesses around town. So it's trying to figure out an even balance between representing the community, because we are using taxpayer dollars to host these events. So it's figuring out how to take care of the community, handle everything that the community is asking within limited restrictions for safety, to make sure people do remain safe and not have experiences like we watched happen in other cities on the 4th. But there has truly not been a generalized goal of any kind of division with main streets, with chamber. There's been a lot of reach out through the years in trying to get chamber main streets involved. And the emails were included, but that was kind of one of those things where, since I am being one of the ones called out and saying that I am creating this divide, I have been involved probably close to 10 years in helping the businesses in Wellington, whether it be through chamber, whether it be through independent volunteering. We host a slew of our own community activities through a business that we own to get the community out and about and involved. So this is something I have been passionate about for almost 10 years. It wasn't through any deceitfulness and anything like that, that the Legion was not included with the town. I will be honest and specifically stating, we were specifically told that we could not advertise for the Legion. And that was specific. It was recorded in audio in a CAC meeting, and it was told to us by the town that we were not allowed to advertise. So when that kind of stuff starts coming up and you have all these red flags, then people are like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do and what are we not allowed to do? Me being new in this board liaison position, I have a lot of learning to do. I reach out to John on a regular basis. I talk to Patty on a regular basis. It's nothing that was ever a goal to create any more of a divide in the community. Because we have tried to reach out through the years. It's just one of those things. We talk about losing a big volunteer base. The volunteer count last year for 4th of July was 56 volunteers. 56, and we can thank our local churches for that, because they brought in a missions team from out of state for our 4th of July last year. They stepped up, they helped us. They did not volunteer this year. They chose not to volunteer this year. They don't want to be involved in the politics. They don't want to be involved in the divide. Our largest volunteer base that we have ever had is with our churches in this community. That's our biggest volunteer base. And that's the highest number of volunteers we ever had last year was 56 to count for a program or an event. I was still a part of it this last year. Extremely grateful that we had the volunteers.
How many do we have this year?
So as far as volunteer goes, I want to say maybe 15 to 20 that signed up for just the community park area, to my understanding. I don't know as far as what the parade was downstairs, because we didn't handle that aspect of the volunteering. One of the things I will say in having discussions is it's not just the businesses that we need to look at that feel like they're being alienated. It's also the churches that feel like they're being alienated as well. And that's through not only these events, and I had to beg to have River of Life thanked for their $1,000 Easter donation for baskets. And I asked multiple times to have them a thank you card sent.
And it got sent.
It
I'm
did
sorry
get
it was
sent.
late.
Right, so, but that was multiple times. I mean, you have something like that, you put them on our flyer, $1,000 in Easter baskets for this community. So it's not just this divide, and this has been, oh my gosh, there was a divide when I was helping with Chamber. There was a divide between Main Streets and Chamber, and then they formed an MOU, which is the memorandum of agreement that they have now. So this divide is gonna be anywhere you go. It's figuring out how to find that balance and finally just decide, we're not going to settle for the divide anymore, and we're going to figure out how to move forward from it. I would love to see all of our churches way more involved. I mean, they used to be extremely involved in everything we did, and they did start stepping back. Now, whether that be through just CAC or alienation through land use code changes, but we all hear a different side. Rebecca has connections to the businesses. She sits on a board with a business. She has those connections with the businesses. I have those connections with the churches, and I'm saying they're not volunteering anymore. It's not frequent you see them sign up. I think that if we were to heal that relationship as well, volunteers would never be an issue again. Ever. Truly and wholeheartedly. I know Josh and Jennifer Griffins from the filling station said their volunteers just aren't from around this area. They don't come in around this time. We have to have these conversations with everybody and the entire community, because businesses do matter. I am a business here in town. Businesses do matter, but all of the businesses matter here in town. So that's kind of one of those things where I have businesses that want to meet with me and talk to me, but they won't meet with me here in Wellington. They're scared because of repercussions. They met with me in Fort Collins. So this is an issue because they feel like if they speak up, if they say anything, if they say they feel like they're not being included, they're going to be bullied. So, and it's very apparent if you check on Facebook, if you don't go along with the status quo, you do get bullied. So I want to get to a point where I hold no ill intention towards anybody. It's just not me in general. And I move on, and it typically can fall off my shoulder. I understand businesses are being affected. All of them are being affected. So, but the generalized goal is we tried to do all of this combined. It just didn't work out that way. So we did ask to have the Legion listed. It did not work out. This is not CAC. We have a list of rules that we're following. It's like the hours here. I have truly, when I went through it, we have, when Callie was hired on, she was hired on as a town liaison. She was not hired on to run the events. She was hired as a town liaison. So, and it's hard to describe what a town liaison is if you haven't sat back and looked at it. Like Callie, she was our town liaison. We didn't see overstep. We didn't see massive amounts of hours being invested. We would let her know if we needed something. She would help us get it figured out. If we needed 3 bids, that's something your board did. That's why you sit on a board. You volunteer to help run a community activities commission. You don't hand all of the effort and energy off to town staff. It just doesn't make sense. This board ran successfully. I've been a part of it for 7 years. It ran successfully. Rick Bacon, Steve Salerno, they were a good loss, but they didn't live within the restrictions. They're not within 7 miles of town. When their terms were coming due, they wouldn't have been able to sit again anyways, unless we went through and rewrote our ordinance. Am I difficult to deal with? No, I'm just blunt, and I know I need to work on that, but it's one of those things where I don't really want to waste a lot of time. Let's do this, and this, and get this done. It's just my temperament in general, I guess, and some people that works really well with, and other people being more gentle probably would be beneficial. But I think at the end of the day, I'll take the last of my time to say, I am extremely impressed with the CAC. So I will say, and sitting on this board for 7 years, we went from having mainly 2 people do everything on the board to all of these board members literally dove in. Mario's connections with the vendors, it was awesome once he was able to work on his vendors by himself. And vendors weren't confused on who they had to call. So once we had stipulated, then Mario is your contact person, then it seemed to go a lot easier for Mario and he was able to kind of work off of that platform. But I think, and it's no offense against Callie in general, I just don't think she was used to working with a board like this, where you have the town involved. Nonprofit boards and town boards are way different in function. So, because I've sat on both of them, and CAC is hard to adjust to because of all of the extra legalities involved with everything. But as a liaison, she was simply there if anyone had questions, if anyone needed her to get quotes on stuff, then they would say, hey, will you get us through bids on this? Hey, will you find out if like traffic, if we can do this map this way? And it's kudos to Natalie, who pointed out that we were needing the map that was demonstrated. She was the one who said that she'd like to have the colors set out for the day to kind of direct where everyone was supposed to go at what time. So that one was a huge for Nat. Nat has more, like double the years I do in the CAC. So it was one of those things. This is a community activities commission. And as much as I would love to say it's just a business activities commission, it is really not what it was formed out. It's not what our bylaws list out. And if we were to say, we actually were following our bylaws to a T. Now our bylaws need changed. That is the goal right now, is to include businesses, to include nonprofits in our actual bylaws, where it states that that is a main goal for reach out and engagement, is seeing what we can do to pair with businesses, what we can do to pair with nonprofits. As it sits now, we have so many legalities preventing us from pairing. It's not fair to, and I'm saying it's not fair to label CAC as the ones who are doing this, because it's not just them. We have rules, bylaws we have to follow. Our bylaws have not been rewritten. Patty, how long?
Goodness, hold on. I'm looking, see if this has a date. Of course, it doesn't have a date,
1980,
something.
Yeah.
I can't tell you right off. This one does not have a date on it.
and that's our ordinances, the 80s. So, and I agree that there is a lot of stuff that has to change. I love doing this. This is actually what got me involved in the town in the first place. Linda Kinsley kind of grappled me in, and she brought me on with the chamber on planning events, and she asked me to do CAC with planning events, and I love doing it. I don't want to exclude anybody. I don't. There just has to be a better process for how this stuff gets worked out. Like Hallie last year, guys, she jumped in full swing. She had no idea what she was doing, like none.
Oh, let's not put down staff members as part of.
I'm not putting them down, so I never interrupted you when you speak, so I'm gonna ask you kindly not to do the same to me. So Hallie jumped in full force, like amazing. And she even openly admitted, she's like, I have not done anything. I am a management analyst. I don't do this. So, and she ran with it. We had so much fun with her. Like in general, she was just a happy-go-lucky person. That's kind of at the end of the day, what we need to really truly be looking at is when you do look at doing this, when you talk about bringing in second parties, third parties to handle a community activities commission here in town. Taylor, when you and I had met, we discussed the CAC, and there's been discussion for years that there's been a removal wanted of CAC. It's well known, and it has been a discussion. You assured me that the CAC was not going anywhere, that this is for our community, ran by those people that want to get involved. It's how they plug into other areas in town. It's completely possible that I honestly feel that I do absolutely fine sitting on the CAC as the board liaison. It's a very interesting situation for me to be stuck in because I still have to vote. So we're in the middle of rewriting the bylaws, but at the same time, we were waiting for strategic plan to be done so we can plan that around what our strategic plan is, because this is events to focus on what we're doing for the next 2 years. It'll be a main goal. Business was one of them, but it's not just in businesses here in Wellington. The goal is to attract new sales tax base to Wellington. You cannot alienate the people wanting to come in from out of town to open businesses. There's one particular, and this is one you and I had talked about. He never showed up that day. It was just one of those things, and I don't know if he'll be back again. So, and that's one of those things where when we're alienating businesses from coming in from outside of town, that also affects sales tax base. That affects loans being taken out for people wanting to open new businesses. There's so much more that goes into it. But I would prefer not to see the CAC be readdressed or moved around. But I think that I would really like to focus more on where we go forward with how we work on partnerships. I think that's the biggest thing. I have nothing against working with the Legion again, ever. I don't have anything working with any of you ladies. I don't mind it. It's just, there's things that need to get settled, and until they're settled, we are not going to be able to move forward, but we haven't tried to settle them. We've spent a lot of time arguing about it, but we actually haven't tried to settle anything. So I would say that if that is the goal or the idea, to make sure that we do bylaws, we work on building those partnerships and defining them well in the bylaws. And then that gives us a base to work off of and guidance for the town to say, no, you can't advertise for them. Well, here in our bylaws, it says we are allowed to. So I think that's the biggest thing. And we have some pretty amazing volunteers that cycle through CAC. Does everybody get along with everybody all the time? No. Do we? Nope. You're gonna have that conflict in life no matter where you go. But you have to eventually figure out that nurturing relationships is going to be a lot better than dismissing them. So that's pretty much what I have. And I have a huge thank you again to the CAC, because I think that this is amazing. This program is amazing for our community. It truly is.
Ashley's on the phone. I believe. Maybe. Are you there, Ashley?
Hi, thank you. Well, thank you. I'll keep it pretty short. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out for so long this evening. The 4th of July was really amazing. The parade was great. We ran out of candy, like Brian said. The events in the park were amazing. We had a larger crowd than usual, but there were pros and cons. And the fireworks were amazing. They're fantastic. And a few years ago, the town board made a decision to take the fireworks away from the CAC because of safety. And thank goodness for LCSO and for our fire district, but their resources obviously are spread really thin on that day. So I think that a really great solution to bridge some of the divides for reducing some of the political polarization is to look into budgeting for an event planner, not to replace the CAC, but just for planning the 4th of July. Excuse me. And maybe the event planner reports to I don't know. I think staff can look into that, how other communities have done it with RFPs. But that might help and solve some of the issues that have been brought forward tonight.
Is that it?
That's it.
Perfect. Yeah, personally, some sort of restructuring of how it functions, I think would be beneficial maybe, yeah, budgeting, we need to get that under control, I think. I mean, spend almost 20,000. It's a decent amount of cash. So I think that's definitely important. I think that would help kind of get maybe the divisiveness out of the way. I mean, 'cause you guys used to have divide, and you came together with an agreement, started working together. If we could kind of arrange something like that with CAC, that'd be a beautiful thing. Still keep the community involved. Kind of get the legalities of things, working on the bylaws, some way that we could still keep the CAC, restructure it so everybody can work together well, know the same laws, how it's gonna function together. Some sort of agreement between the three might be a great thing. I don't know, Main Street's, that's a discussion with it. Possibly moving forward to town, maybe something where kind of combine events somehow in that nature, but still keeping the community engagement there with the CACs. I don't know, we'll have to look at what that's gonna mean for the future. But we do need to figure out the kinks to reduce how much time and energy it's taking for staff. I mean, who made those maps? Was it staff that made the maps with your direction, Natalie? Okay.
So, and that's what I guess my question is, on this list, what is on here that would not have been the responsibility of staff?
So a lot of it shouldn't have been. So
Like what?
typically when
Like what?
okay,
Can you
so
tell me so that I have an idea?
Nat,
Because
you did some highlighting because you had some questions about things that were listed on here that weren't actually a request of the board. Do you know which ones those were? I have a few that you had talked to me about, but I don't have all of them. So meeting with Megan Larson to discuss cross promotion efforts, 2 hours. That wasn't a request of the board. So that's kind of one of those things that we were trying to figure out. So a lot of this was not anything that the board actually requested.
but it wasn't helpful. Was it
Would the
helpful?
CAC have been able to do what they did without it?
And I guess that's kind of where I'm at, because to be quite honest, and I'll be very honest, I cannot set another staff person up for this. I cannot give another staff person up for 400 hours, 200 hours, 100 hours. Because of, I'll tell you, you've had 3 different people work with the CAC 3 different years. You've had Kelly, you've had Hallie, and you've had Callie. All 3 of those people, when I've asked them, will you do this again? Hell no. I'm sorry for my language, but that's what I've been told.
Oh,
And you've said Hallie was very happy-go-lucky. She was miserable. She was miserable. Working with the CAC was misery for her. But she did it because she's a trooper, and that's what we do as public servants. That's what we do. So I can't give you another staff person. If it's gonna be anybody, it's gonna be me, and it's gonna cost you a lot. Because I'm not gonna put another staff person to work with this group. Okay, I'm just brutally honest, and I feel really bad.
Don't feel bad.
it's-
I know one of the reasons with Hallie. Oh, no. Okay, I don't want
Okay,
you to
no,
feel
I'm
bad,
not,
though.
no, I'm done. No,
I mean, I guess that to
We-
headline it.
yeah,
right?
to headline it, what I can tell you is we met with, this was a completely separate meeting, but we heard about, the Estes Park Rodeo. Started out with this little bitty rodeo, 100 people, 200 people, 1,200 people. All of a sudden it's 10,000, 15,000 people. And the group, and it was run by a citizen group. And that citizen group realized that it was just too big for just them. They had to do something different. And they created a 501c3 so they could start taking in donations, and they could start working with, big promoters to help and provide money. And then they still work with the town. They still work with the town of Estes Park, and they receive funding through another avenue, just through like a cash, like here, this is what we're going to give to the Estes Park Rodeo each year to help fund their operations. So I don't know if we're to that point yet. I saw it happen in Windsor with a harvest festival. I mean, it's the same type of thing. It was the citizen group, we worked together, it got too big. It got too big, and so they created a 501c3 Harvest Fest, and they go off and do their own thing, but the town helps, the town supports, the town is there to help we pull trash, us as staff, we pulled trash for the day because that was our job, to help part of that event. So I don't know if there's ways to move forward that maybe the model, like I think Trustee Kinney mentioned, maybe the model is not working anymore. I think the effort is right. The volunteers are right, the citizens, you want all of that engagement, but how do you make a model that works now that we're bringing in 10,000, 12,000 people? Or 20,000?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's my headline, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So you had asked if I had any questions. I didn't realize we were just going generally what we liked or didn't like about everything.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't say anything. I did want to highlight a couple of things. So I just spent 3 hours listening to the meeting in which the CAC decided to move the festivity, keep the festivities, if you want to call it that, at the community park. It was a 3-hour meeting. And so the one thing that is concerning to me is that there's been a lot of discussion about the animus of the CAC. I spent 2 years as the board liaison with the CAC, and there was never a desire to look down on or to work against or to be against any other organizations in the town. Now, I understand people might not agree with everyone. They might not have great relationships with anyone. That has never been the desire, including up to my last meeting with them in April of this year. There still had not been any were against these. In the meeting where there was discussion about moving to community park, that was the big discussion. Businesses from Main Streets came and said, you know, Mr. David was there and shared, this is how much people lost. And the CAC was trying to figure out, can we find a way to do this here? And what kept coming back is that, yes, it's possible, but there were a lot of safety concerns. So they were looking at, well, what about library park? Or what about down in the south was something that was brought up by someone else? What if we looked on the south side of town? And there were a lot of great ideas. And the problem with it is it just like, we've got to get moving with something. We know that community park could work. It was actually a business owner from Main Streets who in the comments said, if you're going to move the festival, could you consider allowing the beer garden to stay at Centennial? To which the CAC said, that actually is a very good idea. They asked this Legion who was there at that meeting if they were open to that. They said that they thought it sounded like a good idea. They were open to kind of whatever went. And then they went and had conversations with the town and ultimately made the decision to move the event to downtown. The CAC was not opposed to that event. They thought it was a great idea. They were supportive. There was a CAC meeting where it was brought up, should we do co-branding? Now, I understand maybe the information given was wrong, but the information given by staff to the board was that we as the town could not have it on there because they were reworking the flyer to say, could we include this and this and that? Maybe we got new information. I don't know what happened. We were told you can't.
It was due to ADA compliance.
Okay, so ADA, but we were told you cannot. So that is the reason the CAC is because that's what they were told. So I want to make it very clear. It was never the intention of the CAC to go out of their way to try and detriment this or, oh, it's ours is better than theirs. You're horrible people, any of that. Now, I understand if people have personal issues with other people, that's totally fine. The other thing I know was mentioned is that we hired an event planner. In the budgeting the position, the board that position was never brought to the board as an event planner position. That was one of the things we were not told we were hiring an event planner. We were hiring a business and community liaison. I was on the board when we went through that budget. I asked a lot of questions because I was questioning whether we should add positions to the budget. That was never in the description. So if that is what that job became, that was never the intention when that individual was hired. The CAC was not set up at the time to have an event planner. It was to have the liaison be the one connection. The reason we had a liaison, I was brought into the CAC because a lot of people, no one else on the board wanted to be the liaison at the time. And I found a way to work with people. And I thought we worked fairly well together. And it was challenging, I know, for Hallie because we had a lot of very different personalities on the board. The idea behind the staff liaison was that we had happening before was we had one person talking to this person in the town, this person talking to the fire district, and this person talking to the sheriff's office, this person talking to somebody else in the town, and it was just madness. And the idea behind the staff liaison was you'd have one staff member who was at the meeting, could then say, okay, let me go back and I'll figure out who in the town needs to know this, and then I'll bring the answers back to you. It was not the idea as the staff liaison really was if there was contractual things that needed to be done that the volunteers shouldn't be doing, they would handle those. But in terms of planning the events, drawing maps, things like that, that was supposed to have been done by the board members. So it sounds like somewhere, and I don't know why, but we shifted away from that. But again, I had these conversations with Ms. Garcia several times in March and April with concerns I had of overreach of the staff liaison stepping in and taking over the board members' jobs and doing things. And it's, for me, I think it's very unique that we have volunteers that are planning our events and they're putting things together and they're bringing different ideas. And it's not just being put together by, oh, we pay a professional from outside, which I'm sure we could hire a great professional, but are they a professional who's lived in the community for decades or knows all the people or knows the history here? Not necessarily. And it's also not something that's now taking up, again, as we talked about, $20,000 of our staff time. We don't pay our staff currently. Now, if we as a board want to go that direction and say we're going to pay a staff member to be an event planner, then great. But up till now, we've never budgeted money for that. So staff shouldn't have been expending $20,000. And a lot of the communication was that if this was happening, then that communication should have been coming back to the board liaison, which up until May was myself. That communication didn't happen. I was not told, hey, we're expending too much money, we're spending way too much time on this so that we could get things under control. Because that was an issue that was brought up last year. And the board had said this needs to be made sure it's gotten under control. And that was the expectation. If it became a problem, that would be communicated to me as the board liaison so that I could, if there was something going on with the CAC, I could get them under control if possible. And then if higher issues need to be brought up, I could bring it back to the board of trustees. That was never communicated to me. The first time I was communicated about the cost of staff time is when I saw this packet. So that, again, the error is in part of the process, but I think that the issue is a lot of what is being laid here is saying, oh, we have these horrible people trying to go after other people. And to be frank, that really is not the case. Now, I understand our process has not been smooth. I understand this process needs to get improved. But we need to make sure that we're focusing on that instead of personal attacks on the volunteers who've given a lot to serve our community.
Well, I'm saying I did the math last year. So, and that's part of the volunteers' responsibility and job was doing pretty much everything for an event. We all had our own little, just like any other board is run. You all have your goals and missions you need to accomplish, and then we report back at the next month's meeting. What we found out, we bring the three bids that we were all supposed to find in. It's how we saved thousands of dollars on bounce houses moving to Fort Collins bounce house. That's what that volunteer position, that's what they do. So that was one of the things where I was confused because now we had nothing to do as volunteers. It was just all being done behind the scenes previous to our meetings. So we actually weren't like actually planning, going out, feet on the ground, getting engaged, getting involved. We weren't doing any of that. So it was just a very interesting situation to be in. So, and one that I think created more conflict than it really needed to be. The town's, staff position in this, it is truly not needed. It's truly not needed unless it is traffic, unless it is contract signing. But we would look over all the bids, review the bids in previous years, pick the one we wanted, and then tell town staff, this is the one we need you to sign. And actually, we can legally sign, according to our bylaws, we can legally sign a contract. We can enter into a contract as CAC board members. Oh, sorry.
I think, so talking about moving forward, there's certain things about an event that are honestly logistical and safety related. I think we've acknowledged that already. You can't have this many people in town without obvious concerns for safety and logistics. Those type of things are not like feedback driven kind of items. Either it's safe or not, meets requirements or not. These are the type of things that must and have to be coordinated by the town. So those items in general, in my opinion, based on liability, we do not require a committee to make any decisions on things that are safe or not. That is the decision and liability of the town that must be, even with direction, it's going to be completed by the town. I think in my mind, those are the kind of items that should be completely withdrawn from the commission. That way there is no questions or holdup in the process, because if there is a traffic plan and designation, but it takes 2 months with a lot of decisions to finalize that, we missed out on opportunity to bid for multiple different traffic organizations, which actually likely cause us to pay more for that function and maybe delay the other safety measures that could have happened early in the process. So things that are liability related, logistics and safety, do not belong to a volunteer committee.
So
They
if you-
don't.
I mean, so it'd be fair to say that we need to look into some sort of restructuring.
Yes.
How is it done
Yes,
for town costs, maintain the CAC? Whatever that looks like is like I don't know, like how they did the rodeo and Estes or whatnot. Some way keeping the committees, we have the input, but removing or keeping the town liable for what's liable for and moving things smoothly, correct?
right. And then the other part of that, where volunteers are so essential, is if we're talking about listening to community, engaging the community, that is a wonderful opportunity for volunteers. And the way that that could occur is through an open house, dot activities, surveys, you know, creating a theme for the event. That's a fun thing for the parade each year, a theme for the general event, marketing and telling people about the event, encouraging people to come. These are fantastic things that build the character of an event. These are wonderful things that don't necessarily have a liability or safety concern. And these are fantastic items that the community can participate in. Should it only be one committee that participates in that? Absolutely not, but we see that there's a bunch of survey results. So the fact that they're coordinating that is fantastic. So I love for volunteer, and then of course the day itself relies on volunteers. So coordination of volunteers, fantastic. Do I think there needs to be a liability waiver? Absolutely, but that's another piece. But those are fantastic parts that the community can build and form a wonderful event. But the items that have to do with actual coordination, safety, logistics, those do not need discussions and conversations. Those are just things that have to be safe. And if we're delaying the decisions and the rollout of those because we're making it a discussion, we're not setting ourselves up for success, and it's costing more money because we're going to meeting after meeting with the same staff member to discuss something with the staff. So feedback on that through surveys, exercises, whatever kind of engagement that I would encourage you to even more would be great things for a commission to really own. And then that way you can take that into considerations where we're doing things that just cannot be compromised. We cannot take a risk for liability because we want to keep it in the community hands. There's plenty of things the community can do, but those things shouldn't be. So I think we need to designate what they are. And the thing is, we're spending 5 times the hours on making sure the community can participate when really it just has to be a certain way, safe or not. So that's what we say everybody, to be honest.
So I just had a question, because I know this is, my understanding was we were doing a debrief on the 4th of July. We've gone way off into discussion around the CAC, which I believe is the next agenda item on our meeting. So I know we've got a lot of people here from different organizations that are sitting here listening to us discuss the CAC. Was there more planned for the 4th of July, or have we moved on to our next agenda item?
I missed that.
So, my understanding was we're doing a debrief 4th of July. We've gone way off into our next agenda item, which is discussion of the PAC, which we've got all these wonderful people sitting here at the table,
Right.
listening to us have a discussion that they aren't really need to be sitting here for. So I didn't know, were we planning to do more on the 4th of July, or have we moved on?
We are going to be moving on to CAC specifics, bringing them to the table so we can discuss this further. Thank you guys for all that you do. You keep this kind of safe. I'm grateful enough for that. One heck of a 4th of July. Really proud of you guys. And thank all of you. Successful 4th of July. More to move on to and be proud about, and each one of you. It's very important.
It takes the village.
It does. It does. Okay, so we will close this first portion. We're gonna take a 2-minute break, and then we'll bring the CAC to the table, and then we'll continue the discussion from there.
Yeah, I know.
I did put one that's in front of me all. Brand new.
Yeah, after.
Yeah.
Like, nice.
Yeah, if you'd like. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get like this product, then we go on. Oh. I mean, yes. But, yeah. Yeah. I know. Okay. Anything else? Let me know. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Maybe like to eat food.
I know, we need to charge some theater, to be honest, I just got the list of time that. Not even that. So I asked, we're having the debrief, we're doing the CAC thing. Give me a list, and that's it.
Yeah.
I was tracking it throughout.
The failure was we had like this probably a year ago, and we did not you a failure. We as a board did not address it either.
But some of it, I mean, and some of it is just trying to be prepared and trying to be helpful, maybe.
For sure.
And I'm like, well, I guess we don't need to be helpful.
Really comes into the discussion that you and I had about, we need to clearly define your role as what, and hopefully we can knock some of that out tonight, because that really is.
Our attorney is having a lot of problems with the role.
No, I,
So he's like, honey, oh my God.
no, but we need to sit down and work it out, but that's what needs to happen is the. Hopefully, we have a productive conversation right now and actually figure out what's a good solution.
Absolutely. Have you?
So I need to replenish.
You need to replenish them. I did not even know they were in there.
But he wants told me.
Good to know.
Oh, my Lord.
No.
No.
We got four citations. It's a start, it's a start.
And 11.
Yeah, but the word on the, let's call it, not finding anybody, don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, people see, if people feel that, I don't want to work for you.
Need to get there.
I know. You yeah, I don't know, a lot of it is just being. No. Oh, no, you're good. Oh, you know, foreign letters get stuck sitting here and, no. That's why I sat here, but now, although I even here, I keep thinking.
Katie, sit right next to you.
I kept thinking.
You're fine.
I was like, okay, that's.
They left the board about it.
Like, I was like, oh no. It's like, okay.
It's fine. Just sit long.
Okay, we have everybody here.
So, message, she gave her feedback today. So Alan McGinnis said she gave her feedback to you. She sent me a text message that she cannot be here.
Okay.
So,
Cool, okay. And.
Is that all of you?
Claire was here.
she's here.
She did, I think she just went to the
Okay,
register.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's on.
Oh, okay.
She's here.
Okay. All right, on to the CAC update. Go ahead, let's just go name, introduce yourself so everybody here knows who you are. Are you Mario?
Sure, Mario Quinones, I headed vendors,
And you're the vice chair,
and I'm the
correct?
vice chair.
I like you're forgetting a very important piece there.
Vice chair, thank you.
I am JD Richardson. I don't want to do this anymore. It's gotten too political and I like everybody in the room. I get along with everybody. I don't like big government, I don't like government. I feel like it's gotten too political and once it's like getting too religious. You get too religious, you miss God completely. If you get too political, you miss service completely. I'll be more than happy to volunteer all the time. I'll do the trash thing. I'll be there. I'll do whatever. I don't want to do this anymore. It's hilarious. This is hilarious. And I literally like everybody here, and even people disagree. I like everybody. It's the best country in the whole wide world. You are welcome. I appreciate everybody's opinions. I appreciate their thoughts, their disagreements. I don't know. I don't want to do this anymore. Sorry. I mean, I'm not really that sorry, but I mean it with love.
Fair enough.
Does
Fair
that make
enough.
sense? Like, that I'd be
Okay.
lying if I said.
So is that your formal
That's-
resignation?
I'm JD. So,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's her way.
Sorry.
Here's her letter.
I mean, if you,
You don't have to be here.
yeah, if you wanna keep
No,
up.
she was involved with the fourth and.
What was your professional?
It's your choice.
Okay, I'm gonna circle
Picture
back
it.
to you as soon as we introduce everybody else. That work?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. I swear.
Blair.
I'm Blair Peterson. I'm brand new to this board, so I wasn't here for the 4th of July and I just got appointed in July. That was my first meeting, so.
Okay. Natalie, go ahead and introduce yourself as well. You already did that, you did that at the beginning of the meeting, perfect.
Well, not really. Everybody was calling my name.
Okay. You wanna introduce
So,
yourself?
right, Dawn, everyone.
Go for it.
I'm Natalie and I'm the CAC chair and I've been involved with the CAC since, Brian Graves was the chair. So that was back, I would say according to all the shirts that I have, that was 2017. My daughter was 7 then, and now she's 11, and she's over at the new middle school, high school. So, and I'm very passionate about staying on this board, hence the fact that I've been here since 2007, been involved with it for and I really hope that we can continue, this board can continue. Because I feel like me and a few others have been the ones that have been stuck, that have stuck to it, because we're very passionate about what we do. And we're very passionate about this town, and I do have very good plans and about merging people again.
Perfect. Thank you. And Ally's not here, correct?
Correct.
Right. Her position, she's board member. Perfect. And then obviously trustee Keats,
And
board
Diane.
liaison.
And Diane's our
Diane.
treasurer.
Treasurer.
Treasurer, yeah. So we're just missing 2 board members.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, Karen, sorry.
What was your involvement in the board?
I really honestly never knew.
She was our floater.
Okay, if you wanna leave, you can feel free to leave.
I appreciate all of you so much. I do. I volunteer. I'm part of it. I'll write checks, whatever. Thank you so much.
You're wonderful.
Thank you.
Claire, you were involved in the board?
No.
Do you wanna hang out?
Yes, we'll have to get coffee sometime.
Ally. Okay. First discussion is gonna be, I think, like operations. So what do you have for us on operations, Natalie?
Operations, like what?
As in how the CAC operates, how you guys went about the 4th of July this year, how it's worked maybe previously, what you kind of see moving forward, or what your thoughts are there as a board. I mean, all of you can chime in.
Yeah, one at a time, like we do
Yeah, yeah.
one at a time. Maybe
Mayor, I think-
one of boys.
Yeah, go for it.
Could I just make a recommendation? I know it's kind of been our board's policy is to discuss issues and not people, so we don't get into personal grudge arguing.
Yeah.
So we maybe just, I know you guys aren't normally in our meetings, but I know we've tried to do that. Could we try to keep that to this discussion as well, so we can work on the issues and figure out how to fix them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I can give you the organization with the whole year so that we don't have to rely back on the 4th of July, since we kind of, like you said, we kind of ended that, so that other people were able to leave.
Oh, no, we're gonna continue the 4th of July.
Just with us.
This is just gonna
right?
be with, yeah,
Us
to
as
see,
the public. that
basically,
wants to-
yeah. I think the point of this session now is gonna be for us to, as a board, to better understand how the 4th went down. How or what we may need to do to address the issues that were stated in the surveys. Issues of budget, things of that nature. Are there? I'm open to all ideas.
Okay.
I'm just trying to look for a way to move forward.
Could we do, since since it's which CAC boards are here? Members and the trustees, and can we do like a Q&A for informational, or because that's easy for me, so that I have a cutoff point.
Sure, I think that's perfectly great. We'll start,
Some of you guys know that I can just talk forever.
yeah, we'll start.
It's good to be aware.
Set our questions with trustee King. Do you have questions for the CAC's operations?
Yes.
Before?
I do, but before we get into that, I'd love to just clear the air from the sense of risk. So I would love to get the perspective of legal as to what restrictions or things we can consider, because we can talk about how things are and all that kind of things, but if it's putting our town at risk, or if it's a liability, it's something we have to talk about changing. So I'd like to get that baseline, because otherwise we might waste a lot of time arguing something that's really not an option moving forward anyway. So if we could do that, that would be fantastic, if you'd be up for that.
This is more discussion of the CAC than I have ever participated in this town. I mean, quite frankly, I have learned a lot just sitting here about the CAC. I've always had some concerns with the ordinance related to the CAC, specifically where it says that the CAC can sign contracts, because I do not want volunteers signing contracts that bind the town, just period. But tonight I'm hearing that the CAC is reviewing bids for services and then directing staff on which ones to select. I've heard that the CAC is soliciting bids generally. That sort of thing I think is kind of concerning to me. There's a lot here that I'm actually very concerned with. I thought the CAC was more of an advisory board that sat kind of directing town staff, who is the staff liaison, directing that person and guiding them and giving kind of big picture goals. And it sounds like that is not at all what this organization is. So quite frankly, there's a lot of things. I think that legally for liability reasons, for budgetary reasons, that we need to totally reform how this entity works. I'm hesitating a little just because I'm just figuring out what this entity has done or is doing or wants to do. And I think it's more, set some goals and then we can figure out how that can work. I'm hearing, I'm terrified, to be quite honest. Sitting here and hearing everything that I've heard tonight, I'm terrified for what this entity is doing, perhaps on behalf of the town, acting in a way that you normally would not allow an advisory board to act. So I kind of think I'm going to leave this meeting after learning what the board wants this CAC to look like, what the CAC wants the CAC to look like. And I'm going to go back and do a bunch of research and draft some memos laying out some guidelines, some boundaries around what that should look like, because this is a lot.
But this is an advisory committee though, correct? Because we vote and set our own budget.
Well, that alone is something that I think should be changed and is concerning. I mean, any board appointed, most other boards are advisory boards, or the town has specific committees like the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustments. The Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustments have powers that they actually derive from state statute. The town creates them, but they have outside powers. Pretty much all of the other boards of the town would usually serve as more of an advisory board. The Board of Trustees is really the acting body, and they approve contracts and other things. So it should be an advisory board, really. I think it acting on its own, it acting with its own
Government?
It's acting on behalf of the town. I mean, it is a group of volunteers that, per the statute and per the conversation, is executing contracts, soliciting bids, managing its own budget, spending money. I'm concerned. I'm not saying these things are impossible, but this has opened my eyes to what this CAC is doing. I have it on my computer, and I'll need a piece of paper because my computer is about to die. So I'm not ready to answer that question. I would love to listen, and if I hear things that I have input on, I will add. That's the concerns.
If I'm going through this, I was hoping for that, but of course I feel on the spot, so I'm sorry for that. The things that, for the CAC board that I'm seeing on here, that I believe in wholeheartedly, and I would love to get your feedback on how this works right now, is the bullet points that says create vision for town events and programs. And then ensure success of events by recruiting volunteers. Those are my two favorites, to be honest. So I'd love to hear about what your process is and how that works right now for creating vision for town events, and how do you essentially recruit volunteers?
So, Rebecca, the vision for town events and programs is basically the whole plan out from point A to point finalized. on what to do first and what to do next, and then, and the day out
Okay,
and stuff.
that's more
Coordination of the.
operational. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca.
Questions about volunteers, right?
No.
Well,
first
no,
it's the
so
vision
it's
and-
the vision. So how do we create our plan? So, and I think the best thing to say is off of public comment and resident feedback is pretty much where we go. These events were already created. I think that we go according to, like you said, so if you look over here, incident command for events. All of the third-party contacts, the town's already doing that, traffic control, stuff like that.
Okay.
I think the vision part of it, Nat, is what she was describing. You're thinking operational. She wants to know what the vision is for the CAC. How do you accomplish that? Is that
what you're asking? huh?
So, just in other words, I'll just say it a different way. What do you see the 4th of July looking like in 5 years? For Wellington. Cause that's the vision, right? Like, where is it going? What will the field be? How will you, like? Who will be there? What will it look like? Those kind of things, like what's the actual vision? Like, how do you see it in 5 years from now? And I'm just curious, because you guys have the most insight than anybody, the most experience, so I'm curious what your vision is. For the 4th of July in particular.
when can any of them answer? Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm talking to the.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
board.
All of you guys.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, anybody, please.
Mario's all the way. Okay. I'll go first and then, you two can say something. I would say it's gonna get bigger. It's gonna get bigger because back when I first volunteered, it was in Centennial Park. And I saw how it went from this to where we couldn't have it in there because it was too crowded and too cramped. And then that's why we moved it. But I'm thinking that it may end up in a different location just because of how big it's getting every single year. And I could see incorporating every single entity and board and nonprofit in the town. I can see that's how I can see it getting bigger, because I know that the town growth is getting bigger. And I know you guys are tackling the infrastructure on that. And all I can say, it's gonna get bigger. New ideas are gonna come in, new ideas are gonna get drafted and played out, and whether or not they work, or not, and that's what we did this year, was we threw in some things that were different, and of course, it scared everybody, or a lot of people, I should say. And now we're going back and saying, okay, what can we try out for next year? What can we change and what can we do different?
Awesome, so I'm hearing you're seeing it as an innovative, inclusive, grander and bigger.
Yes.
So those are awesome.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
from
you
that?
definitely answered my question. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Now, did you want the
Yeah.
other one and then all of us to just?
Yeah, let's
answer
talk about the
both?
vision, just the vision. for now.
Just
Yeah,
the
we'll-
vision, okay.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
So I know, like, we as a board just, came up with our, vision statement, or whatever you like to call it. Does the CAC, do you guys get together and come collectively and say, hey, this is what, we'd like to do during our term with the CAC, or this is the direction we'd like to go? Do you guys have something similar?
Well, right now, we're working, going through to finalize the roles and responsibilities the way they should be,
Okay.
the way they want, and, seeing if we can change around the bylaws since they haven't, like we said, back in the 80s, when it was first, and below it's past the 21st century, so. Our board has gone over roles and responsibilities many times. We've switched things around, we've discussed it. And we're just trying to finalize it.
Okay.
And then now we're going to the bylaws and seeing what we can do there. And then we'll come up with our what we call mission, vision statement.
Yeah, so you're in the process of that.
Yes, we are. We're just going one.
And kind of getting up to speed, is this something you guys have done in the past?
No one's
Okay.
ever
It was
set it up. for us.
discussed last last year it was discussed as a major outage that we had never sat down with the CAC and really kind of don't lead it as board and say, where's our vision? I mean, there is a little bit of, okay, here are the events that we're gonna do, but typically it's, you know, you get up, you get started and they're working on events right away. So there never was that visioning, and a lot of it that we've seen is just lack of clarity on what exactly those roles and responsibilities were. Like I know Dan freaks out about the signing contracts. Well, they actually in reality haven't been signing contracts. And we
No.
realized that last year. We said, no CAC signing contracts, but there's been a very big lack of clarity of like, what exactly is that role from the board of trustees to the CAC? And then also saying to the CAC, okay, you guys sit down and figure out, what do you want that to look like? So it was identified last year. They're just now working through the starts of that process, but we hadn't done it in the past.
I was just waiting for a full board and we almost had a full board. But,
Yeah.
so, and in here, there is one written that is in the actual bylaws ordinances. And it is simply stated development and coordination of community activities which make the town a quality place to live and generate civic pride. These activities may include, but are not limited to. That's it. There's
Okay.
no vision, no
Okay.
mission. That's something I think for years we actually discussed. No one would address it previously that sat on the board. So that was actually one of my main goals and talking points that I have been talking about for a while, is trying to figure it out. I did say I would get with Dan as soon as I kind of heard feedback from the chair and vice chair. They saw this document first. Just so when I did send it out, it had Patty's feedback because she has given feedback. And we've met about it, but then it also had the chair, vice chair, so they can go and talk about it to their board. I didn't want to be like, I want to sit there and answer questions and.
Can I ask a question? When you refer to the bylaws?
The ordinances,
Ordinance,
yeah, so these are the only, so we have these as an ordinance, but the ordinance are the same as the bylaws, so.
Similar, there's a separate bylaws that Brad sent out a long time ago.
Years ago,
and I think I've seen the ones that you've seen
Yeah.
on those
that was
bylaws.
handwritten,
No, it's a document.
But I don't know that it was ever actually adopted. to be
I don't-
Quite honest.
Nobody
and-
knew.
But okay, so this is the ordinance,
Yeah.
not the bylaws.
That is the
And
ordinance, not the
Ordinance
bylaws.
calls for actually the creation of bylaws, which should be separate from this.
they
So,
should
so
be, yeah,
just so we're clear when you're
Yeah.
referring to ordinance. Okay.
But there is no actual bylaw.
there is
Technically.
bylaws.
Technically, there are no solid adopted bylaws by the
They
CAC.
are,
Well,
they're put on online.
We
They're
have
not-
bylaws that we think were adopted, but we don't actually
We
know.
don't know.
Right,
Okay,
Those are not included in the packet, correct?
correct.
they're not.
All right, so I would love to hear, Blair, what your vision is for 4th of July in 5 years.
Do you want me to go last since I wasn't a part of this, Fourth of July, or do you just want me to go next?
You're a member of the community,
Go
you
for it.
have a vision, wherever you promise it matters.
I think that it's really important to not let this event get too big and not let this event outgrow our town, because I think that it could easily outgrow our town. I think that it's really important to keep the focus of not only this event, but all of our events, because let's be honest, the turnout for the Christmas parade is also large. Not as large as 4th of July, but also large. There are other events in there that could get bigger if we wanted them to, but I think that it's really important to keep all of the focus of these events on being Wellington specific. That doesn't mean that people from out of town aren't invited or vendors from out of town are turned away. But figuring out a way to best serve our community, and the feedback year after year has been not being on an outlying park, being in the center of town, being in the hub of our town. And that doesn't necessarily mean it can only be in Centennial Park, but being somewhere that's inclusive of the majority of the participants of our town, which one of my biggest complaints, I feel bad wearing my shirt because I'm not here representing this, but I came from work, but one of my biggest complaints as an employee of a business in this town, and literally a lifetime member of this community, is that all of our growth is to the south, which is no one's fault. That's just where the land is. And we are a veteran community. And those people come in and out on the frontage road, and they work in Fort Collins, and they shop and eat and bank and buy their gas and spend all of their money in Fort Collins.
And the majority of the people who are committed to our community are in this more central location. So I think it's important to cater to the people who regularly support our town and who are regularly involved in our town, and growing it to the exact right spot. Not stifling it and keeping it small, but not making it too big.
Your statement really actually aligns with what's written here, talking about civic pride and those kind of things. So I'm hearing a lot of that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you. Mario. Do you know this was gonna be? I didn't really, I don't know. I'm not trying to. You're the one here for all of you. Yeah.
No, I see it, you know, being a great event in 5 years. I would like to second, to see how we can minimize growth. I see based on what the town lawyer comes up with, the Community Actions Committee, working within the parameters that are given to us in creating successful events, especially the 4th of July and all the events. I think how we create vision is we have events, holidays, and we put forth ideas as a committee and take ideas from community feedback and try and implement them. I understand that there's a lot of legalities, and I think once we work through those, we can return our focus to the community and providing safe, fun events for this town, as the CAC has, from my understanding, for years now. Again, this is my first year on here. We didn't have a full board for the majority of this. Now that I look back at it, me and Nat and Sherelle pretty much did a lot of, we put a lot of hours in too on the 4th of July. And I thought it was great. One thing I liked about high school is I got along with everybody, and I get along with everybody here too. And I see the stuff that's on social media and I just stay out of it because I like people on both sides. I have nothing against anybody. I'm on the CAC to serve as a community member. And I want to be involved and volunteer every chance I get. I have children that live here, and that's why I decided to serve. And hopefully I'll be on the CAC in 5 years.
Thank you. And then I guess the other part was recruiting volunteers, but.
And then so recruiting volunteers, you know, I reached out to, I attend River of Life. I reached out to them. They've offered volunteers for us. We did try to put together well, I guess, town staff put together some type of invite where you can sign up to volunteer, and who they sent that to, I'm not sure. But I know Sherelle said we had 15 volunteers, but I think I only seen 5 that were there the whole time. And then again, I was on vendors, so I didn't have an opportunity to work too much on volunteers. So maybe somebody on the CAC could be in charge of volunteers.
Yeah. Any other feedback on recruiting volunteers?
It was discussed on the board of reaching out to the churches and stuff, first because of last year. And then we decided to go beyond and ask the community if they would like to help the day of and see how we operate from setup, you know, and they were able to take shifts. So we discussed that, and we had a town staff who's in charge of the social media and all that, and the website, post a link to the Sign Up Genius on the social media post, asking, hey, would you like to see how the 4th of July operates? Come and sign up for a shift and you know, and help these community volunteer board members. And stuff like that. So it was put out there, and it was put out there weeks in advance.
Cool. So your personal connections plus general.
Yeah,
solicitation through
yeah.
socials. I think that's.
First, we did the personal connection,
Mhm.
and then, some of them responded, some of them didn't. And then we decided to do something different and reach out to the residents themselves and see what kind of outcome we got from that.
I think that we are very clearly on the precipice of the way that things were done historically,
Yeah.
when this board kind of ran unchecked. And moving forward to a way that it runs legally, logistically, safely, by following all of the rules, but it's not just that part. I think every part of this board is on this precipice of change, how events are planned, how volunteers are recruited. And I think that the biggest thing is just building and rebuilding relationships, new ones that haven't existed yet. Old ones that have been damaged, and figuring out a way to repair them, because when you look at things like town cleanup, I don't know who runs that. And sometimes they only have 2 volunteers, but I see it posted, and sometimes they have 10. And that's something that's completely independent from this town. And those people obviously care about this town and do it on their own.
Yeah.
And have a way to gain volunteers in our churches. And we have so many nonprofit and different organizations in this town. It's flabbergasting to me that we have a shortage of volunteers in general, when you can constantly see people who have this civic pride and care about this town. But figuring out not so much how things have functioned in the past, because obviously that was broken and it's not working, which is why we're having these kinds of meetings that have never happened before, and there's new engagement. But fixing old, what's the word I'm looking for? Relationships, fixing old relationships and building new ones, and continuing this surge of involvement that's currently happening, not just for this board, but other boards, but for this board, and figuring out how to keep people engaged moving forward with some sort of, they have to get a reward out of it. And obviously, like, their volunteers are not getting paid, but there has to be some kind of reward, whether that's just they feel appreciated at the end of the day rather than not appreciated,
Right.
or whatever it is, and figuring out how to grow that and snowball it moving forward. Would be my answer to that question.
Thank you.
You do get a t-shirt.
I love t-shirts.
Hi.
So, to go off of what Blair was saying, for the rewards we've done in the past, which we couldn't do this year. We usually had a business do, business cook, burgers, and they provided chips and drinks absolutely for free, not to veterans, just veterans, for the service members and first responders, but also for the volunteers. So the volunteers were noticed when they had the lanyards, they had the shirts on, and they would come and say, hey, I'm a volunteer, I'm here to get, my free hamburger, and then they were able to get the free meal.
Yeah.
This year, I can't really answer that, but, this is something I encourage every year. Is to at least get the volunteers something to eat without them having to pay for it. Because some volunteers, like us board members, work all day from 5 a.m. until 5 p.m.
Yeah.
and stuff, so it's good to get somebody who appreciates us and is willing to give us something like that. And we usually do send out a social media thanking all volunteers too.
Yeah, and we also do a volunteer appreciation night from the town perspective too.
Yeah, I remember that last year. I still got my mug.
I know.
I love it. So, okay,
Yeah, that'd be worth discussing within the CAC for
Yeah.
sure, moving forward without a doubt.
Yeah.
Solid. John, trustee Gator.
Yeah, so I did have,
wait, is Kenny done?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't want him to jump. So,
so I wanted to kind of ask a question of really from you guys' perspective is what do you see the role of the CAC? And I'll build some framework around that because one of the things that I like about the CAC is that it was very different, right? Having, instead of paid professionals and people coming in and planning events, you had community members planning events. Now, assuming in an ideal world that we could do everything that makes Dan happy, I think that's awesome
Oh.
to have members of the community doing that, but this is where it comes into. Is that something that you as members of the CAC want that role? Because there is a lot of work. I mean, we're planning an event for 10 to 15,000 people. There is a lot that goes into that. So it is absolutely pointless for us as a board of trustees to say, well, the CAC should be the ones planning the event because John thinks it's a good idea. If the very members of the CAC are saying, hey, we'd love to give some vision ideas, we'd love to help at the events, but we don't want to be planning at all. And so I guess that's really what I'm looking from you guys is, do you really want to be in that role of doing a lot of the planning? Or do you want to just be, hey, we'd like to be involved in the process, but we don't want to be doing everything. We'd rather you guys find it in the budget to pay someone to do that. Does that, so I want to frame the question that way, because I think a lot of what we are looking at is, and that's what I've always said, I have my opinion of what I think is good for the CAC, but I'm not the one that matters. It's you who are on the board, because you're the ones that are doing the work, you're getting out there and doing that. So I would like to hear from you guys. What do you see? Would you like to see it more? Do you like that idea of, hey, we're doing as much as we possibly can? Or do you want to say, we'd like to be involved, but we really would rather you guys hire someone to come in and do a lot of this, and then we help guide that?
I think we should start with Mario first.
Personally, I like the tasks that are given to us. I think that's why a person joins a committee such as this. And one of the neat things about the committees is there's a bunch of different experiences or expertise on the board. So kind of everybody fits in where they feel comfortable, or sometimes people step up where they're not comfortable to do things that that are needed to be done. You know, I have a background in vendors and events and concerts and stuff like that. So that's why I joined. And we did pretty good with the vendors for being my first year. Doing that in that position. And I think it was fun. I'd like to do it again. It's the first time I've ever done it on a board. I've done it for a company, but the more you give me, the better it is for me.
First of all, I think that it's really unfortunate that, and I don't know their lives, but that the other two aren't here so that they can't answer those questions,
Sure.
especially this one, when we're now
Sure.
only a 5-member board.
Sure.
So I don't know how they would feel, but, I guess with the simple majority, I would echo Mario's sentiments exactly. I know you were there at my interview, which was just a couple months ago. I also have a college degree and a background in event planning and event management, and it is, aside from waiting tables, which is so much fun and I love it every day of my life, it's my true passion. And so I wouldn't have, if that interview happened a year later and they were like, hey, there's no event planning, you're just like talking about like what would be cool, I'd have been like, this isn't really the right place for me. Like, I signed up for it for that exact reason, because I love this town and the events that it produces. And it is my genuine goal to help make them better and more successful. So yes, I would happily take on those roles.
Awesome, thank you.
That's why I put you on the board there. So-
All right,
Oh,
Natalie, you're up.
Okay. Oh, what was the question? So it's 9 o'clock.
No, I know, it's
Okay.
9 o'clock. So really is the responsibilities. Do you want to have more of those roles? Kind of what is shared as being more, yes, we want to be more involved in the event planning and the picking of things. Again, in the ideal world, if we do it in a way that makes Dan happy, I want to be involved as much as I can. Or do you want it to be, do you see it as more of, no, let you guys hire someone to do most of that, and then we'll just kind of give them ideas or advice or so? What is kind of what you see as what you're wanting from the CSE?
I've liked the way things have been done and stuff, and I know that with John's question, that sounds familiar because that has been discussed tonight with several members. And it kind of scared me a little bit because I really don't want this board to be diminished. I really like how this board, even though, you know, most of the members I've gone through that I've worked with, I felt like during the time before they decided to move on, I felt like it was strong, that we all enjoyed what we were doing. And just planning the whole thing and then getting excited the day of. And seeing the community come together, seeing the families and seeing the couples and, people from out of town and stuff like that, saying, hey, I'm here visiting so-and-so. And they told me about this and, oh, it's such a big deal. I decided to come here rather than here. And I like the way that I want to continue. I would say I want in the future, from now until, I would say, I like the planning process. I like how each board member can take on a role, for each event that we do. And right now, we were going over the budget. We were going over the budget past few meetings, and we even had a special meeting. And new ideas and new events were coming up, and that's something as the chair that I would like to look at for possibly next year and the future years, because we've had plenty of residents reach out and from surveys and et cetera, and say, hey, I kind of want to see this. Could you guys possibly look into this? And I'm like, oh, this would be great to have a new event. I mean, to see the outcome and the, emotion from it and stuff like that. So I feel like I enjoy the planning process, and if we did hire somebody, then it would kind of take away from what we're passionate about. And I want to keep this passion alive. I want to keep this and stuff. And I have enjoyed working with all the town trustees that have coming on from our board, and the staff liaisons that have come and gone from this board, and the passion that we all have for the community. That's the one mutual thing we have. So yes, John, to answer your question, I want to.
Great.
I want to work. Yes.
And that's important, because I mean, as we're having those discussions, we need to know, because again, if you guys are saying, please hire someone, then we shouldn't be, but if you guys are saying no, then I think it bears us trying to figure out where is that balance, because absolutely there does have to be that, right? We can't have people out renting golf carts on their own, right? There are things that we can't do, and that we just have to identify what those are and what does that balance point look like, right? How can we make sure that we're in a spot where Dan's not coming home every night thinking, what did they do again? And that the rest of the board of trustees can really say that we feel like we're in a good spot with how things are going. So I appreciate you guys sharing that. That's helpful for me, because again, I don't want to be pushing, here's what I think the CAC should be. You're the ones who we put on it. It's you guys' job to decide, what do you want to see from the board? And then it's our job to figure out, okay, can we make it work? And we make work what we can.
Yeah, and I mean, touch base on like the dimension of the CAC or whatnot. I think more or less we're looking at a direction which to go to maintain events and the CAC. Not getting rid of it, but figuring out some way to make it all work together cohesively and work within the realms of which is legal and what makes sense for liability purposes. So don't let that fear of all of a sudden this is gone bother you, because I don't think that's a plan of anybody here. We're looking at a way to restructure something to make it work for the long run for events and that nature. Trustee Teets.
So this is a lot of what I do plan on coming back and getting all of their feedback on. So I would like you guys to ask the questions that you're wanting, because this is good notes for me to have when we come back to the talking points of setting all of the mission and vision and stuff like that up. So I don't want to take your guys'
I didn't
time.
want to, I didn't want to.
Nope, you're fine. Thank you for thinking of me.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys something. I think that's kind of important here. I think one of the biggest things for the CAC obviously is bringing and attracting volunteers. Knowing that there's at least two organizations, right? The Legion and the Kiwanis. I don't know. I know, Mario, you mentioned earlier that you had, Trustee Teets mentioned earlier there were about 15 volunteers. I think, Mario, you said maybe there were 5 volunteers or so that stuck around for the whole day. I don't know how many were at the Legion. I neglected to ask them that earlier, but I'm sure they had at least probably 10 volunteers, and I'm sure the Kiwanis probably could have brought 10 volunteers too. I think the big elephant in the room here for me is knowing that those organizations are not going to continue working with the CAC going forward due to the trustee liaison. Is it appropriate that we continue forward with the current board makeup as it is, knowing that those organizations are not going to participate? Or do we continue going forward with that, knowing that we are going to definitely miss out on a boatload of volunteers? That would be my question.
I would just have to ask, has Kiwanis or the American Legion, I'm a Legion member, by the way. Have they volunteered in the past on the CAC for anything?
No, we have not had.
They have, they have,
The Kiwanis has.
So I was gonna finish my sentence real quick. We have not had the Legion. I volunteered before as they're newly formed. Cause they've only been here for what, 2 years actively? But as far as Kiwanis, so we had fishing derby, right? That we did with the Kiwanis,
Years and years ago.
right?
What was their involvement? What was their involvement prior to this board?
We didn't have a lot of their involvement. So prior to this, I want to say, we maybe had, for the full year, all the events, maybe 10 to 20 volunteers
From the Kiwanis.
for the whole year.
My perspective is a little different because the CAC actually consisted of multiple founding members of Kiwanis who specifically left those positions previously. So, and I disagree because I know the members and they're at all the events, not just the board, but all of these, I see them there previously. So they're active volunteers in every thing. So I see them a lot.
And,
I mean,
and
Natalie
again,
is Kiwanis.
I trustee Teets, respectfully, I'm really asking you guys, because again, it is your guys' responsibility to work with these folks and be able to bring them into these events and get them, you know, as volunteers.
sure, and then, so just to, so I asked a question, and then just to clarify on that, you know, we wanted to advertise for the American Legion, but we couldn't because they were under a different, what is the word of the contract, or they were under a different permit.
They did not have, they were not compliant with, they didn't have ADA compliance, so we could not include them for this particular event on our flyer.
And again, it's less about the marketing materials, right? It's more about retaining volunteers. That's what
I don't think they don't, as from my knowledge and from this year and from what I've heard, they don't. It won't affect us if they don't participate or if they don't send volunteers.
I have an answer to your question, Brian. Sorry, Blair.
You're fine.
I'm working with the American Legion right now. They choose to just work with me for now as the CHE lead chair. We're working together to collaborate for Veterans Day. So not to fear, Brian. American Legion does want to work with the CAC. They just have some personal stuff. But I'm just letting you know that I am working with them for our Veterans Day breakfast. All that information won't be out until we're finished with the details and the approval. So I do have a reach out with them. As far as Kiwanis, I would say, since I'm one of the original members, when our Kiwanis from Fort Collins came up and wanted to build a club up here. What I've seen is Kiwanis, the members we have now some of them work well together, but a lot of them have personal and past experiences that they choose not to work with the CAC or the town. And I say, and it's an and the town because of past personal experiences with multiple people. I choose to stay on Kiwanis because, like I said, even with the CAC, I'm very passionate about this town. I love seeing it come together. I love seeing people help each other. But when people have personal and past grudges and stuff, I try to stay out of it unless it's something that's related to unless it's something related to something that I can fix. But with the Kiwanis in the town, it's not something I can personally fix. So I'm trying to fix unions with other boards down the road. So that we can possibly, it's up to them on if we can go back working together for next year and the future years. So does that answer your question, Brian?
Sure.
Okay. Where?
So to add a little bit, the Legion was involved last year. In addition to having the beer garden, which brought in other businesses from Wellington and Fort Collins to have their beer in the beer garden because I was there. They also had hot dogs for sale, I think, or something. That's where I got my only food at the event last year. I was able to attend last year. They had volunteers that not only helped with the beer garden, which was a part of the event, but also the event itself. So yes, last year they have been involved in the past, and that was the first year they existed. So it would lead you to believe that moving forward, they would continue to be involved. I have also spoke with both Dennis and Roy, specifically, I don't know other members of the Legion, but I do know those two. And they have made it abundantly clear that they will not work with the CAC moving forward as long as the trustee liaison that's there is in place. And while I respect your guys' political correctness, I will not give a non-answer. And no, I don't think that it's appropriate to continue this board forward the way that it's structured with the current trustee liaison, because both the Kiwanis and the American Legion specifically, because those are the two volunteer organizations that have been discussed and that you asked about directly. No, they will not work with the CAC directly as long as that trustee liaison is in place. And whether it's 10 volunteers a year or 20 volunteers at an event, we are still severely lacking in that. So when the two largest volunteer organizations in town are saying, for this very blatant and specific reason, we will not work with you, I think that's a problem. It's not personal for me. Obviously, it's personal for them. I don't know what happened. I wasn't involved when those things happened. But for that reason alone, in an attempt to make this board as successful as possible and these events as successful as possible, the right people should always be in place.
I think that answers my question.
So to kind of clarify and ask a question of my own, because this is super important. So I just shook Roy's hand when he was standing over here and he straight looked at me and he says, I have absolutely no issue with you. I said, I have no problem with you either. And that was it. So it's not a conflict that cannot be resolved, plain and simple. But that's not our biggest in our history. Our record for volunteers has not come from Kiwanis or Legion. It has come from our churches. So our biggest volunteer base is actually our churches. And I have a fantastic relationship with almost every single one of them. So I've been in this town for an extremely long time and have been able to form those relationships. And we should really, and this is something I talked to you about, is rebuilding a relationship with the churches in town. Because that is statistically, I've been 7 years on CAC. It's statistically the most volunteers we will ever pull is through our churches and organizations that directly work with them.
I have a question. So when it comes to then stating the current board liaison, is it because that liaison has voting power? Or does that matter at all to these individuals?
from my understanding, I think that that might be part of it, but I think that more it's day of event, personal interactions that have happened between the liaison and those organizations, either individuals in those organizations or the organizations as a whole. And I think it's unfortunate that Kiwanis wasn't, or to my understanding, Kiwanis wasn't invited to be here the way the Legion was. I don't know why. And I think it's unfortunate, and this is no one's fault, but this went this long, and those people had to leave for their other volunteer obligations. And I do feel guilty sitting here, or I feel uncomfortable sitting here speaking for them. I'm only speaking to the comments that they have made directly to me in the conversations that I have had with those people. Maybe this is another conversation for another time, you know, just at our last CAC board meeting. Dennis really had the opportunity to talk. I literally had to be like, everybody needs to stop, because Dennis sat there for the entire 2 hours, and the liaison had left, members of our board had left. We were at a time crunch. He had all of 30 seconds to speak. And to your comment, that's not the sentiment that Roy gave when he spoke on behalf of the Legion at the last CAC meeting. So he may not have a problem with you on a personal level outside of this, but that's not the sentiment that him or the Legion or the stance they have taken. And Dennis echoed as much at the end, on behalf of the Legion at the end of the last CAC meeting. So apparently this topic needs to come back up when they can be here to speak for themselves, because I shouldn't be representing them. But
I think,
But before we move on,
Trustee Kenny's had her hand up for a while, trying to speak.
sorry.
And then
I'll
answer your question.
before we move on, but I want Trustee Kenny, absolutely, I do want to quickly remind us that Administrator Garcia had pointed out to us earlier that the staff liaisons have not had a good time at this either. So I just want to make sure that we have that in the record.
Can I?
No.
I
Okay.
think. Trustee Kenny, please.
I do want to talk about the liaison. So, in general, across the board, we've made a consistent decision that trustee liaisons are non-voting members of anything. So I think that consistency needs to come across. I mean, and you have the opportunity to abstain up to this point for sure too. So I think that's something that maybe we could just draw the line there. That's not even a question at this point. Every board, commission, anything that has a trustee liaison that's a non-voting member. I think it'd be really safe to just say, that's good for this too. Regarding the staff liaison. So in this case, the staff liaison essentially is, from my understanding of the role and what to me makes sense, is they are the person who of course is responsible for coordinating all staff with all commission, right? So they have a lot more insight, legal perspective, all these kind of things. So what I see, and from my experience, again, this is with Planning Rama with a staff executive director, is essentially there would be a bunch of opportunity for us to consider options and to pursue those volunteer recruitment, those kind of things. But essentially within the decisions, there's only so many options that are viable, effective for budget, safe. So what would likely happen? And what's crazy is I did this with the same person we're talking about, with Callie in particular. Callie Cooper was the person I did this event planning with. So essentially wouldn't it be cool if we could do a new event? You know, it's a great opportunity. We would love to do a new event. We'd like to do a new event. Wouldn't that be awesome? Right? Staff liaison saying, within the budget, within this, it could be possible. Here's option A, B, or C. And if you guys were to pursue one of those options, go for the vision, go for the theme, go for the volunteer recruitment, you know, whatever other tasks that are appropriate that aren't a risk to the town, have at it, make it happen. But those other things, you know, they really need to be determined by the staff of what's viable and possible, because we, you know, those are the boundaries I think that we need to understand. And I think this is really where we're stuck, is the boundaries of, you know, committed volunteers who want to do work. I mean, that's awesome. Like, everybody wants committed volunteers who want to do it. But they have to do it within a certain portion of what's possible and what's legal and what's not gonna put the town at risk. But within those parameters, I say go wild. But we need to make sure we understand who determines those parameters. What money is associated with those parameters. That's our board. That's what we need to do. And then I say, everything you guys have said, I completely agree with. I've been kind of summarizing it here. Volunteer recruitment, vision and purpose for community engagement, recommendations for improvement, to be innovative and inclusive. You want to work the event, you want to do the work at the day, make it happen and lead volunteers. You guys want to be those leaders. And I can see that because you're here. So all those things I think are what you guys want to do is what I would love for you guys to do. I just need to make sure those boundaries are in place that we're safe, everyone, even as a volunteer that you're safe. So I just want to do that. So we need to talk about those liaison positions because it's not necessarily a commission saying liaison, go do all those things. Well, they have all these resources behind them. They already know what they can and can't do. What they need to say is, you have great ideas. Based on your ideas, we can do A, B, or C. You guys pick it and let's roll. So that's, I think, the operation of the actual group kind of needs to change in that way to make sure everybody's safe and there's no risk. So that's my feedback on that, but talking about liaisons, definitely non-voting.
Just to touch real quick on one of your points and for clarification, are you saying that the town staff should oversee our budget because we have a treasurer and we,
Absolutely. And I think this board is the one who has to determine the budget for each of those things. I mean, that's actually one of our actual jobs, some of the things, managing and allocating budget.
how much is the budget, the CSC?
$35,000 or $32,000 last year. And I would just like to point out from the 2 budget sessions that we did, we submit it to the board.
Yes.
We look at like what we think things will cost because it's not, I mean, if you want it to be your job, you can be, but it's not your job to look at what those things are gonna cost and spend that time doing that. So with the staff liaison's help and history, like traffic control is gonna cost this much, that much, that much, and then we submit it to the board approves or denies it. We don't spend that money. It's just, they have said this much money is for these town events, and then the staff is spending that money.
It's an
Maybe
kind of an
address your
allocation.
concerns.
Think of it as like how it's worked in the past is instead of Bob coming up and giving us the public works budget, the chair of the CAC would come and say, hey, here's our CAC budget. We've budgeted 15,000 for 4th of July, 8,000 for Easter, this for that. And they have it broken out. Literally, this is for art supplies, this is for face painting. And that's all listed out there. And then even though that's not what's in the bylaws / ordinances, they are not allowed to spend that money. All of the expenditures have to come through. They have worked with staff and said, hey, here's what we want to do. And staff will bring them back and say, here's who we found for porta potties. And they'll say, yes, this is good. And then staff will then go and order the porta potties and then they'll bring it back to the CAC and they'll make sure it's recorded in the treasury. So even though the ordinances and stuff are very like, whatever, they can spend the money, in reality, it's in essence the same as Bob presenting us with a public works budget saying, here's all your things that we're doing with this money. The CAC does the same thing. So.
Things are purchased through P cards. Town.
I have a couple of quick questions. I know we're putting a lot of importance on the American Legion and the Kiwanis, and we should, okay? But we do need to put a ton of importance on the churches. They are a huge volunteer source for it. Do we have anything in the works for them to reach out to them? And what are we doing on that part?
So I would
Are
just,
we trying? Okay, go ahead.
so I would just say for this year, that was appointed, or that task was taken on by town staff. So Kelly did a great job on everything and I love her, but the reason why we didn't have a good volunteer turnout this year is because the person that was in charge of getting volunteers didn't get the volunteers. So if that position is put to a CAC member,
Could we not talk about staff, please?
I'm not talking about.
You did, you
staff.
just talked about Callie and she did
I
a
said,
good job.
whoever- she did a great job. And so everybody was appointed
Mhm.
a position and everybody came through, and where people fell short, they fell short. It's not an attack on anybody.
Okay.
It's the facts. The facts are we had very little volunteers. And we had no involvement or opportunity to reach out to volunteers because we were busy doing what we were tasked to do. So I think a CAC member could lead volunteers and then we go from there. Churches, nonprofits, businesses, everybody. Volunteering is for everybody.
So, and Dave, that's actually in here as a question, is if the board wanted to add another position, which is volunteer coordinator.
Okay.
So I did include it in all of these talking notes, is if the board wanted to actually include a volunteer coordinator as a position within their board.
My last question is,
Wait, can I answer?
okay, yes, absolutely.
Again, not having been involved in last year or the planning, I don't know what did or did not happen. I don't think that anybody didn't do their job. I think that it was a
No,
sign
I'm
up.
not
and people
saying
didn't
anybody
sign up.
did it.
No,
Yeah.
but, if if those relationships weren't damaged for some reason, if we've had the churches involved in the past and that's what created the highest voter turnout, then there has to be a reason that they weren't there, which comes back to we have damaged relationships that need to be fixed. And the only way to fix relationships is with people, like sign up geniuses or brainstorming, like it's literally a personal connection. So yes, it is important to get the churches involved. I agree. The reason that those two organizations are being discussed is because they are ones that have been vocal about being involved or not. But I also don't think it's fair to say that the churches weren't involved because the River of Life did do their pancake, or not the River of Life, sorry, wrong church. Josh and Jennifer at the filling station did do their pancake breakfast and they were involved. Like the churches are still involved. And it's, again, it goes back to building new and fixing old relationships, which is the reason why what has been happening is clearly not working and there should be a new path moving forward.
And I think what you were saying about having a volunteer coordinator is probably extreme, but you guys are working on that, so that's a good thing
Yeah.
at that point. My last question is, we're looking at using Centennial, not using Centennial, moving it out to the new high school. What are you guys' plan? And we were talking about trying to keep it localized downtown, not localized down, what's going on?
So I think that is a discussion for something later.
Okay.
Right now, we're really trying to figure out what
That's
the
kind of
CAC
future
itself is
thing.
gonna look like,
Right.
not what the future plan for
Okay.
the fourth is.
I don't
yeah.
get asked that one, that's cool.
Yes,
That's a good subject to bring up. That's the meeting that I was planning before I found out about this one, so that's still in the works.
Okay.
For location, and we are including those who have questions and concerns and complaints. And so and we're involving those who follow the rules. Not just the town, the good people that work for the town, staff. But the rules that we follow with the fire department and the sheriff's department. So that's something that the CAC is working on, is another huge meeting like this one, to explain why things have become the way that they are and why we can't go back to 5-10 years ago.
I think we need to really work with Main Street and that to make sure that they're all inclusive on that. So whatever happens, that we have, everybody want to work together and make this as good as it could be possible and keep it controlled. Right.
That's what I'm working on. So. Don?
So I think that Larry made a really good point of we need to fix relationships and build new relationships. I think that there's, every relationship is a two-way street. So we can just say, oh, well, these people are mad at us or they're mad at this person, so we're just gonna get rid of that person. That's not fixing the relationship. When we're all acting as adults, we sit down and say, okay, let's sit down and figure out how to fix this together. What did we do wrong? What did you do wrong? Let's figure out how we can apologize for what needs to be apologized for. Let's put the past behind us and set the example for how we move forward. You know, everyone talks about the division, that's a choice. Division is a choice. We can choose to either say, well, I'm not going to work with you unless you do this. That is a choice someone is making to say, I'm not willing to work with you. Or we can say, hey, I have been wrong. There have been things done from my aspect that were not appropriate, that should not have happened, and I'm so upset about that. That doesn't mean we sweep it under the rug. It means we need to address it. But that means it needs to be addressed and rectify what we can. And then we need to say, okay, how do we move forward? If we all truly care about the town like we say we do, we should be willing and able to say, I can be an adult, I can sit down at the table and figure out how we put this behind us. Now, we cannot force that on anyone else. But from my perspective, if we as a town say that we want to be the example, and I've heard this from many on the board, that we need to be the one setting the example for not divisiveness, we should be the first one to say, let's sit down at the table and let's work this out. We should not be the one saying, oh, well, we're just gonna, get rid of people and move people because these people don't like them. That's not fixing the problem. That's just saying, well, we're not even gonna deal with the problem. We're just gonna we're gonna shove it under the rug. And so that would be my request is let's fix the relationships, not just cover it over. Let's figure out where is the problem and how can we fix that.
My opinion differs because there have been claims of completely inexcusable behavior from very reliable sources. In this case, we need a blank slate and we need a new trustee liaison because it's a huge area of contention. And I cannot allow people to continue to be hurt. And my understanding is that is what's happening from very formal complaints. And so I must insist that we have a different trustee liaison for this group because it is not good for Wellington to continue and persist what's going on. There's just too much contention. I think we need to make our best effort to get a blank slate, continue forward, and encourage everyone to participate because it is not in a good place right now. And I can take that directly from survey responses, from formal complaints. It's not okay how it is right now. It's not possible to improve these relationships, unfortunately.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Okay, well, that's my recommendation.
Thank you.
So my question goes out. So if someone were to come after they see this and they move me out of my seat, if someone comes along and says, I no longer want Rebecca Kinney on the Parks Board, then what are we doing? So if someone comes along and says, I no longer want you on the board you're sitting on, remove him. Then what are we doing? It sets a really sticky precedent because you know that's what's gonna happen next from the opposition. I know it because like you see it play out. You're just gonna see this continual. So it's either we all stop being stubborn and work together, or this is gonna be going on for the next 2 years. And this is getting to a point where it's absurd and ridiculous because there are two people on the end of the bashing. I hear you speak of one on the end of all of the bashing. So you're speaking for one, but you're not talking on the other side of whom also is being affected by this environment. It's great that you're saying that you're sticking up for your friends that own businesses here. That's awesome. But there's two sides to that coin. You're only worried about one side. I have no reason to carry a grudge. So, and that was kind of one of those things is there's no reason to. So I think that setting a precedent like this, we are going to be getting ourselves into an extremely sticky situation. That's what I'm worried about.
Not being on the board, can I respond to that since I'm a part of this meeting, or is that just a board conversation?
You're here. Let's hear what you gotta say.
Mayor's call, so.
Yeah.
We're not talking about one complaint. We're talking about years worth of survey feedback. We're talking about 5 after tonight, board members who have quit in the last year. We're talking about 3 staff members who have vocally said that they were miserable in that role. We're not talking about one complaint. We're talking about, I don't know which one person you're specifically referring to that she's championing for, but I can give you a list of 10 or 12. And like she said, they're formal complaints. They're not just complaints on social media. This room earlier, and unfortunately this meeting has gone on this long, and the part that was talked about first, those people weren't a part of, but this room was full earlier of people who echo that sentiment. We're talking about multiple volunteer organizations. We're talking about multiple volunteer organizations. We're talking about people who have made formal complaints, businesses, individuals, citizens. We're not talking about one person, one business, one situation. So maybe it is setting a precedent. I'm not on the board and that's your decision to make, but we're not setting a precedent of if one person complains, you change things. We're setting a precedent of if something is broke, you fix it.
I'm sorry, I think you.
Something is not working correctly, where volunteers are being lost, board members are being lost, staff members are lost. If it's broke, you fix it. You put the best people in the best roles to get the best results for the best town that we all live in.
So I'm sorry, I think you misunderstood my statement where I say that there's a group of people that are filing the complaints, and that's one side of the coin. But then there's also another person who is being attacked is the other side of the coin. So what you're looking at is it comes down to support and understanding of everybody, not just a single group or entity of people.
So who is being attacked?
Okay,
Okay, never mind.
multiple different people have resigned or moved on. They are all separate. There's one commonality. That being said, something we're gonna have to look into. Move on from there. I don't want this to get any more personal than it has. Yeah, that's my thought on that.
I make it quick, keep it short. So I know that there's been a lot of mention about the 3 prior CAC members who left. All of those members left. Well, I was the board liaison, Trustee Teets was a board member. And all of them left immediately after the then sitting board of trustees are talking about removing this, getting rid of the CAC completely because they were upset with how they were doing things. Now, I don't know what all of them put into that, and their stories may have changed over time. They may have had multiple reasons for leaving. But a large part of that was the then board of trustees led by a breakage of the sunshine laws, text message of the mayor and 2 members discussing getting rid of the CAC completely. That's immediately before they left. So I want to, when we're saying there's a commonality, yes, Trustee Teach, anything that has happened on the CAC for the last 7 years, Trustee Teach has been a part of that, but so has Natalie. I've been a part of it for the last 2 years. So I just want to be careful that we're not conflating, oh, well, they all left. And now I understand some of them might be saying now, oh, that was a primary reason. I don't know. I did not speak with them about their primary reasons. But I will tell you that a large part of that had to do with the way that they were treated immediately after the 4th of July last year by the then sitting board of trustees. So keep that in mind, that before we start making these allegations that they all left because of this one person. Okay. And then again, to the prior town liaison having a miserable time with the CAC, that responsibility falls on me because I was the sitting board liaison for the 2 years that she served intermittently in that. So realistically, the only liaison that Trustee Teets has been a part of is with Ms. Cooper. So if we're going to talk about, oh, well, these other people there, that's fine, but we need to be having a discussion about me because Trustee Teets was not the liaison for that. So I think we just need to be very clear on that. And then again, we do have policies within our board about, you know, malfeasance and different things like that. And if this is truly what people are saying and they want to present evidence of why that's that, I'm happy to consider that. But if we're just going to be going based on, well, people have told me or they've said this or they've filed complaints, I don't know how those complaints have been filed. I read lots of things in the survey. I also read lots of things in the survey about another trustee. That doesn't mean that they're true just because someone, again, this is an anonymous survey. as Ms. Garcia said earlier, we didn't control to say only one person could take it. We don't know. So we don't know who said the things about trustee Teeth. We also don't know who said things about the mayor pro tem. That just because it's in a survey doesn't mean it's true. If we want to do an actual investigation, there's a process for that. But I think we need to be careful about just, well, someone said it, therefore it must be true. So that's my thought.
Due diligence needs to be done in it for sure. So that's something we can discuss later. Dan.
I'm not sure, I mean, the process on this, I'm not sure malfeasance is necessary for removal from the advisory board and, for example, the CAC ordinance says that members can be removed for neglect of duty. There's also other statute or other parts of the code that say certain things about people can be removed for malfeasance or neglect of duty. I think in this case, this is the board's representative.
Yep.
So I'm not saying what you've said is incorrect. And
No.
that there, like, possibly an investigation and this needs to be substantiated in some way. I think it could be done with a vote, but it would require a public hearing
Yep.
or a public meeting.
Yep.
But I don't know that it would need to meet the standard of malfeasance
Sure.
or anything like
And
that.
I agree with you. I'm not saying it's legally required to. I am saying personally, I don't feel we should just be making things based on, well, we've heard things. I feel that we should have grounds for, to me, this is a very serious deal if we're speaking to remove someone from a board. And if we feel that we have to do it, we have to do it. But we need to have well-founded grounds more than people responded anonymously to a survey. Before we, and again, no, we could literally just say, 4 of us don't like you, we're getting rid of you. Yes, we absolutely could legally do that. But we talk about division in our town. Do we really think that is going to help with division in our town if that's how we choose? Now, if you feel it will, I will respectfully disagree that I don't think it will help with division, but that's again, I'm one person. And if 4 people decide that that's how they want to move forward, then they can.
I feel like on all of our other boards, the trustee liaison is appointed. So I don't know if that's even required to do all those kind of things. Maybe it's just best person for the time and situation. That's how leadership works. Not all leaders are the best, but they might be the best for the time and situation. So, but the other thing I had, speaking of Parks and Rec, one thing that operationally they do right now is essentially a staff liaison creates the agenda based on what's required or what opportunities there are available for that board to advise them on. Because, they would be the best to know what's actionable, what's the timing that's required, those kind of things. That might be a recommendation I have operationally for moving forward is, if you guys have ideas and things, I think that'd be fantastic to submit, or if you want to learn more, we have guest speakers, essentially bring them in to be those experts to learn more items. But I think really in this case, a lot of the agendas, since they are some very important timelines, I would recommend that if we're redoing the ordinance and how this functions, I think that's what we're talking about. I would recommend that the staff liaison be the one in charge of setting up the agenda, because they would have the best indication with all of their resources and information, what action needs to happen in order to progress for any of those events or responsibilities. So that would be my recommendation. Of course, you can always ask to put them in the agenda. I would never take that away from anybody, but I think that will make it function the most efficient. And then that way, the staff member can do exactly what they need to, when they need to. So it's not something that's revisited or something over and over again when it can be resolved right then as an actual item. So that would be a recommendation I have as well.
So clarification and question, is this, are we looking at putting a staff person in? Because it was my understanding that Patty cannot assign another staff member to the CAC.
I would
She can't.
assume not as it is. That's my.
That will be me.
Got it. So
I will create your packets. I will do whatever you tell me to do.
got it. So as far as, but we're also not looking at hiring.
Nope.
We had kind of
We have
already.
not.
We're not.
Right, so that would be the caveat to that one is we're not discussing hiring another person like a town staff. And Patty has an extremely full plate, the board, so this right here is already feedback from your CAC board. This is what they went through, I think 3 times. And what they were interested in seeing, participating in, being involved in as the board. I know that Natalie had stressed multiple times, she likes setting the agenda. I think that that's kind of one of those things where if we're not assigning a staff member to it, we're not hiring a member for the position, a lot of the stuff that you're suggesting sounds like a lot of staff time. So, and that's where we're trying to figure out is what they said they want the tasks. They said they want to do the work, legality, there's nothing wrong legally in an agenda setting that would get them into trouble, and that's been setting agendas for a while now with the support of a staff. So I guess that's what I'm just trying to decide is we're talking about one thing with setting agendas and stuff like that, but I thought we had kind of already discussed, we're not assigning more staff to this.
This
As
group
the
thing,
way that it sits.
yeah,
Got it.
this is a best practice of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board that works extremely efficiently. And then, that's why that's my recommendation.
What we've done is, the town staff and the chair have worked together to put the agenda together and what should be in the packet that would be related to the agenda. And doing that has worked very nicely. And I would like to continue doing that because next Monday, me and Kelly are meeting together to put the September agenda together. So,
I think there's always improvement for more efficiencies and those kind of things. So I'm glad to hear that's worked well for you.
It's definitely above and beyond what we do with the Board of Trustees in their packet. I can tell you that much. Because we put together the agenda. We go over it with Taylor, but I mean, with the mayor but he doesn't tell me what to put in the packet. He doesn't tell me the attachments. That's my job. That's our job as the resident experts. So we do spend less time on trustee items than we do on CAC items. Which I find kind of interesting. I mean, it's a comment. As you guys are talking, I'm thinking about it.
And there's a formal process for us to add something to an agenda as well.
Yep.
So like if there's something very pressing that we need to drive, or that was a consensus of 2 or 3, I can't remember, then there's a formal process to add something to the agenda. But generally speaking, they're driven by staff and our feedback that we generally provide.
So I think, where this evening has taken us. I think we can all agree that we are going to need to look at how the CAC is functioning, how it's going to function moving forward, what responsibilities the town is going to take on, what responsibilities the CAC is going to have in their role in events, and how that's going to move forward. And then I am going to need to do my research and due diligence on seeing what it means for the liaison, based off of what I've heard all evening. Does anybody have anything more to say?
I would like to say something. For what I've heard, and as the chair and the person who's been with the CAC for, I've already said since 17. I'm already coming up with a list. Like I already have, I always carry around a little pad when I come to meetings like this and our CAC meetings, other meetings where I'm invited to. And for tonight, I feel like I need to meet with Dan and maybe Patty later on.
You bet.
And, the mayor. And who else needs to reach out concerning the CAC and stuff related to? I feel like you guys can reach out to me, via email or text message. Just put in the subject, who you are. Cause I get a lot of spam emails. And I'm willing to discuss one-on-one, and work with people's schedules, and I'm willing to listen and hear complaints and see how we can resolve things. If we're really willing to resolve things in tonight, it sounds like a lot of you guys want to resolve. We just need to go beyond just talking. We need to actually do the action. For me, I'm more of the action part and the conclusion part, because or else it's just gonna sit there in your backpack. It's just in a metaphorical sense. It's gonna sit there like a rock in your backpack and it's not gonna be released. And so I agree with you, Mayor, that it sounds like the CAC will need to meet again to go over the roles and responsibilities. This has been a crucial subject that's been going back and forth. I would do a survey to see which to the CAC members, to all the board that we have now, and see when we would be available to when we would be available to come back again and do a special meeting just specifically on the roles and responsibilities. And I would like it where we're not heated again, because for me, I agree with those who said, I don't like negativity. And yes, I know it needs to go out there, but this video, every single meeting is recorded. This one's recorded visually. The CAC's meeting is basically listened. It's audio. So I feel like people need to be aware of how many people, and estimating how many people are actually viewing this, and then going and telling others to go and view it. So we need to be careful what we say on video or recording. And I feel like if you have any personal issues with somebody, I feel like it need to be recorded. It needs to be a one-on-one discussion and see what we can do about it, so that when we go back to recording, the public does not need to see that. Because this is the one thing that I've been seeing a lot recently, even before the 4th of July this year, that people are not working well together, and the citizens are concerned. And as people with different boards, we really need to listen and do some action solutions to the way we communicate with each other on recordings. And we need to work better together. I've seen trustees where they're able to work together. And I've seen other boards where they were willing to leave all their personal issues behind and come and work together and think about why you're doing this, and think about your goal, and think about why did I do this in the first place? And think about that the whole time you're talking. So I would say thank you so much for allowing the CAC to be involved with the first half of this meeting. I feel like that really needed to be resolved. And done. And the second meeting with just us and you guys and the town staff that made it. And the public that has given up their time for tonight to come and listen to us communicate with each other.
Agreed. Thank you for that.
Go ahead.
I don't have anything further. Does anybody else have anything further?
The longer would be some.
I would say last thing, if we're looking at different things here, do your due diligence. You know, because there's a lot, there's two sides to everything. Make sure that we make the right decision. And yeah, just can't jump on.
So I think to wrap up from a staff perspective, I think what I'm hearing is that potentially it may be a best idea that maybe Dan and I and Patty can work with, all of us work together and kind of work out what actually is required by law, kind of retool some of those roles and responsibilities. That's what I'm hearing, and we'll likely come back and circle the wagon, correct?
That would be correct.
Sounds good.
That's best for stuff, I think, for sure.
So we'll take it from a staff perspective and then come back.
Can I make one request? Either one of two things. Part of the voting trustee liaison. I think in part has not been addressed because we haven't figured out what we're doing with the CAC. Can we at least address that part to remove that if we're, because that was what happened before. We weren't sure what we're doing with the CAC, so we didn't remove the trustee voting. And so it's a year later now. We're still gonna go on this process of figuring out exactly what that is.
It wasn't, the ordinance wasn't changed along with some of the other committees
Right.
that were changed just because this conversation.
Right, it hadn't happened. I get
And,
it. I just don't want to go down another road where we're 3 to
I think
4
the ordinance
months.
says that the trustee representative may vote. No, it says, I don't think it says they have to vote, so I think you could refrain from voting in the meantime. I think there's ordinance changes are.
Okay, can you just clarify to make sure, because I didn't know that was an option for them to vote or not vote, so if you could just, you don't need to do it right now. If you can just clarify, and make sure if it's,
Clarify right now for you.
oh, okay.
Awesome, and especially since most of the time, so what was happening is we'd only have 4 members show up and they would count me as a voting member to continue the meeting.
I think if 4 members shows up, that's a
No,
quorum.
3 would show up and I was the 4th.
Okay. I
So
cannot believe
to
that's,
continue the meeting, and then I was
I like you
stuck
to do
in
that.
a situation where I,
I think that's
like-
not something you could do because you're not a member, and so it's the quorum is a majority of members. And so you have to have
but I'm classified as a member under the ordinance.
it's a, you're classified as
You're
a
as a
board,
voting
no,
representative.
as the board representative, not as a.
So
But
it's 10 o'clock, so can you
Yeah.
again look into that and
Yeah.
get back to it, so we don't go into
Yeah.
another conversation.
I have seen numerous times, but there's sometimes where it's.
And, but then, Mayor, and.
Yeah, and